Hello, guys. Just getting in the saddle. We have about 3 minutes. Loading the sound.
Perfect.
Hop
Thank
on
you,
that
sir.
saddle, Bradford.
Yeehaw.
Oh, yeah. How are we feeling this morning, Alex?
Much better.
Buoyed by that 5-2 victory, no doubt.
Yeah, let me tell you. Go Sens, go.
I was upset. I bet on Ottawa. I had -1.5. Yeah, it was the best odds on the board. I did bet on Ottawa. And I'm out $5 because of it. I also bet on Ottawa because I was like, man, this team's so soft. Sunday beat both in the lineup. They'll probably itch the bet. And they tried. They literally tried. It's a list, yes.
Hey, Tanner, do I have any other sound off of the top? I'm waiting for my rundown link to load.
Nope, you're good. Just that Hofer open. And Doty said to send the sound down the line. So put everything in off.
Doty, make sure we don't go through the camera today. During the commercial break.
Should be hearing it now.
Location. 30-day new car return promise, complimentary lifetime warranty, complimentary 1-year maintenance as well, all courtesy of Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum. So when you head out there, tell them Salter sent you. It's fun to be out there. They make it a great time. Their sales team is fantastic. Financing options for everyone. Again, visit them at AutoCentersNissan.com or head out to Herculaneum. It's Auto Centers Nissan.
Okay, so you filed your taxes this year, but you know you have past IRS issues. And now the IRS letters are coming. Hi, this is Lance Story with the Lance Story Law Firm. Don't ignore those IRS letters. Rights and deadlines to defend yourself. Waiting could cause you to lose those rights. Call the Lance Story Law Firm now and let us help you get ahead of the IRS and defend your rights while you still have time. The Lance Story Law Firm is located here in St. Louis, so take the first step and hire a tax resolution attorney. We've made it super easy to schedule your free consultation in person, or you can do a phone call and save travel time. Remember, IRS problems are legal problems. So before you send money to some out-of-town, high-pressure salesperson, give us a call at the Lance Story Law Firm. Call today at 314-260-6... All right, guys, coming down to 10. Let's have a good one. 260-6120, or go visit LanceDruryLaw.com.
Try to have fun.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertising.
Right, Ferrario?
I'll do my best. No promises, boys.
Just WXOS HD1 East 101 ESPN.
Remember the Blues?
101 ESPN is broadcasting live from Helen Fitzgerald's first round action of the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Refreshed by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Now you guys need to clear my throat.
Dude, this is so freaky. Look at this.
That's hilarious.
Gets it into the middle of the ice, down low. It goes, push towards the goal. Hofer the save. Puck comes to the near wing. What a save by Hofer! He was on his back. He saw the Ottawa shooter on the near circle. He kicked up the right leg and the puck hit him. Along the blue line, Pinto near wing, wide open to go to the far side to Tkachuk. Shoots it on again, and another save by Hofer as he had to go from the right post to the left post to keep Brady Tkachuk's 32nd goal from going in.
Yeah, I tell you what, chance-wise, you're looking at the Ottawa Senators should be ahead on the Blues 2-0. And in fact, now it's the opposite because of one guy, Joel Hofer.
Yeah, he's unbelievable, right? I mean, I think he definitely won us that game. You know, there's a lot of backdoor open nets that he made some great saves on, and definitely kept us alive there, kept us, ahead. So.
That's what it sounded like right here on 101 ESPN last night as the Blues win 5-2 on the road at Ottawa in a game that we said earlier yesterday, Alex, was a legitimate must-win for your St. Louis Blues. They find a way to get it done. They did not play particularly well, but Joel Hofer saves them once again. What was your biggest takeaway from last night, Alex?
That they started off slow, and by slow, you heard Joey say it there in the first period. The Blues should have been down. I don't even know if it's 2-0, probably 3-0. I think the expected goals for in that first period, according to Natural Stat Trick, was like 1.75 or was like 2.1, something like that. Regardless, Joel Hofer was outstanding in the first 10 minutes of the game because they started off slow, just like they did against the Anaheim Ducks. And it wasn't like it was sloppy play. It was just the Blues couldn't get the puck out of their own zone. Ottawa was swarming them. And Joe said it in pregame, with that top line of Tkachuk and Pinto and Batherson, they're going to come at you in waves. And Joel Hofer stood on his head and gave the Blues an opportunity to find their game. And then about midway through, they finally found that offense that they were searching for. And it's the luxury that they've had all season of their goaltending being phenomenal in the early portion of a game. The tough part for another team is you want to get shots on goal, but the more shots you put on Joel Hofer and Jordan Binnington, the more comfortable they get into games, and that allows the Blues to find their games. Although you did it against Ottawa, which is good, and you needed those 2 points, you can't afford to play that way in these next 2 games, because if you start the first period and have a Corsi rating at even strength of 73 to 27%, I think it was,
it's not good.
In favor of Ottawa, you're relying way too much on your goaltender, and the other teams will pounce on you.
But that's the reality of who this team is. We know this, right? Like, when they win, they have to do so in spite of the way that they perform at 5-on-5. You typically have to do well in special teams. You need to get excellent goaltending. At this point, I'm resigned to the fact that that's how the Blues win. Now, even with the way that we know them to be, though, at 5-on-5, last night was a special kind of bad. Last night looked like last year, where you're allowing those backdoor tap-ins. You heard the cut coming back in from break, where Jordan Kyrou was like, hey,
he said it.
Good thing Hofer was back there because there were a lot of potential backdoor tap-ins that were available to them. That's not what you want. Brady Tkachuk, the save that he had on Tkachuk, that was one of those where Joel Hofer didn't even believe that he was going to be able to make that one. He said afterwards, I didn't even think that I was able to get it. I can't believe that ended up being in front of me.
He closed his eyes and he swung his leg around like a snow angel and said, look what I found.
There was nothing about that was like, oh, this is something that would be repeatable. We could definitely do this again if we tried.
Let's keep this up.
That's not the way that you want to operate, but it's the way this team has to operate, man. This is who they are. At 5-on-5, they're not driving enough offense. They're giving up way too many chances going in the other direction. And so, yeah, it's going to rely on great goaltending from Joel Hofer and from Jordan Binnington. And if you get it, and they have the vast majority of the time this month, you can find a way to steal these games. The Blues goalies have saved at least 90% of the 5-on-5 shots every single game so far in the month of March. That has to continue for them to be able to have a shot to make the postseason this year. Vegas last night gets a win. They end up keeping up with their pace that they had set previously. And now we're going into a couple of games that will make or break the Blue season.
Yeah.
In the next 2 games, you play against Minnesota on the road tomorrow night and Vegas at home on Monday evening. If you win, tomorrow afternoon. If you win those 2 games, this team will have a fighting shot to be able to make the playoffs. Anything less than that, though, and I think they're done. You could, if you go to overtime and win tomorrow against Minnesota, that might be enough. You could potentially still be able to overcome them.
Yeah.
But that game on Monday against Vegas,
you can't lose.
You have to win that in regulation. Not only do you have to win, you have to win in regulation because of how much of a deficit you were in whenever you started this thing.
And here's the hard part: if you go to overtime and lose tomorrow against Minnesota, or you just lose straight up against Minnesota tomorrow. If Vegas plays Columbus tomorrow, so if Vegas beats Columbus,
that's a loss.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what we think. They only in the Blues play the Columbus Blue Jackets. But if you don't get those 2 points in Columbus, or Vegas picks up 2 points, now you're talking about a 4-point difference when you play Vegas. To where if you win, you're still that 2-point cushion that you can't catch up with Vegas. So I mean, these next 2 games are your season. If you lose one of these games, there's no ifs, ands, ors about it. Like, if you don't win these next 2 games, then the uphill battle, the percentage of chances for you to make the playoffs goes from like double digits to single digits. And I don't care how easy the schedule is or how hard the schedule is for Vegas. At the end of the season, Vegas plays 1 more game than you. And unless you get a 4-point cushion up front of them, they have an opportunity to overtake you. And if they beat you, that head-to-head matchup is in favor of Vegas.
It's the spot every team wants to be in, right? Controlling your own destiny.
Absolutely.
You know, you take these next 2 games. One, again, I think if you win in overtime against Minnesota, I think you're right. You probably can still avoid them. It's the Vegas one. It's the 4-point swing. It's controlling your own destiny. You lose that game to the Vegas Golden Knights, or you lay an egg against the Minnesota Wild, now you really need help. And you need help in a significant way from the other teams around the National Hockey League that are playing the Vegas Golden Knights. So for the Blues, these next 2 games are huge because every team always talks about, well, we just got to do our job. We got to do our job. Well, the fact that you can control your own destiny to a certain extent by winning these 2 games is massive for St. Louis.
All right, there's been a lot of conversation about Jordan Kyrou. He has been a sticking point, to say the least.
I don't know about you. I've talked great about him all season long. You're the one that's been super
I got a
negative.
jersey.
If we're going to be critical of Jordan Kyrou when he plays poorly,
yeah, BK.
And I think it was reasonable to do so over the last 5 to 7 games, I don't think he had played all that well. We also have to give him his flowers when he plays the way that he did last night.
Absolutely.
If Jordan Kyrou does not have the game that he did last night, the Blues do not win that game.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
He was a big piece of you being able to get out of there with 2 points. What did you see from Kyrou that stood out to you last night?
What I said yesterday and the pressure that's on him, he showed that last night. I said he's got to find a way to take over a game for this team to have a little bit more confidence in him. And he did that. I felt like Kyrou played last night with a pissed-off attitude that he was taken off the top line and taken off the first power play unit. He drove the offense for the 3 goals that his line scored. That first goal that was scored in the first period, Kyrou entered the zone with his speed, skated around the net, took it up to the blue line, took the slap shot, and got it on net for Brandon Saad to score. The next goal, he goes around the net, gives the pass off to Colton Parayko, who's driving the net. And then the third goal, the goal that he scored, he gets it off of being in front of the net. That's Jordan Kyrou in a nutshell. When he wants to perform at that level, he can be one of the best players on the ice. The problem is, it's got to be him deciding to do it. And if you don't bring it every single night, then people can see the difference. And this is why we're so negative about him, BK, is because we see what he looks like when he takes over a game. And I understand a player can't do this 82 games in a season. It's a lot to ask. Only few can do that. But I see what the effort looks like when he's engaged in a game, and I see what it looks like when he's not engaged in a game. And that's the difference with Jordan Kyrou. Last night, other than Joel Hofer, he was the best player on the ice. And if this team wants to make the playoffs and do anything, and if he wants to justify being that top-line player that I question he is, that's the type of performance I want to see the final 12 games.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. BK and Ferrario is what you've got here on 101 ESPN. Blues off tonight, back in action tomorrow, continuing to be on the road at Minnesota. Then they will return home from a huge homestand. Vegas, Calgary, San Jose, and Edmonton. That West Coast road trip that the Blues go on, this one's going to be the same thing essentially, but reversed. Those teams are coming here. Vegas, Calgary, San Jose, and Edmonton. That's how you finish up the month of March. A bunch of must-win games coming up here in St. Louis. They put themselves into a situation where they are still alive, but because of the hole that they dug themselves heading into the trade deadline, it's not going to be easy to be able to get in. So we will have certainly full coverage on all of that right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. We are broadcasting live today out at Helen Fitzgerald's. We'll be here until 2 o'clock. The Fast Lane will be here from 2 until 6. Come on by, enjoy some food, a cold Bud Light. 101 ESPN giveaways, plenty of screens. They're going to have all the games on throughout the day today. It looks like we are already getting started here at Helen Fitzgerald's. A bunch of people coming out to watch these games today. Join us until 2 o'clock, the Fast Lane until 6. It's all brought to you by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bradford Bruns back in the studio for us today, doing a fantastic job working on the board. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get into the Cardinals because there was a ranking, Alex, earlier today from 2 different independent spots, both of whom had the Cardinals ranked outside of the top 10 when it comes to offense. What happens for the Cardinals this year if they are not a top 10 offense in Major League Baseball? We'll get into that in 15 minutes, but coming up next, man, I think there is no more David versus Goliath in college basketball. I'm not sure it exists anymore, and last night was the perfect example as to why. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
In full swing. We're live at Helen Fitzgerald's.
Refreshed by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Reeves puts up a three, no good, and Oakland with a March memory of a lifetime.
Coach, Jack, we appreciate the show, guys. Go enjoy it.
Appreciate it. We're not a Cinderella.
That's what it sounded like last night on Turner as Oakland takes down Kentucky 80-76, the 14 seed that had never won an NCAA tournament
Not
prior.
a Cinderella. Don't look at the 14 seed.
I know that people will hear that and laugh at it. I did last night, too. It's ridiculous. You are a Cinderella. Embrace it. Appreciate it. That's what March is for. That's why we love this tournament, is for stories like Oakland.
Before that game last night, nobody could have named what the mascot was for Oakland's team.
Correct. And certainly nobody had known about the kid number 3 that made 10 different three-pointers in that game who had played in D2 a year and a half prior. Like, that is what this month is for, is to learn about stories like Oakland, to learn about the characters that are on a team like that. But 10 years ago, Oakland wasn't just a Cinderella. That would have been a David versus Goliath type of a game, where you're watching a team in Oakland that, for most of us and for all of them on the roster, they would have gone into the game believing they had no chance to win until there's like 5 minutes left, and when you let a team hang in the game that long, they're like, oh, we can do this. It doesn't feel that way anymore to me. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this, but as I watched that game, or as I watched Samford come back against Kansas last night, you watched Duquesne against BYU, some of these teams that are the smaller, quote-unquote, group of 5 teams that you would expect to see in a college football landscape, for example, they're not afraid anymore. Princeton wasn't afraid of Arizona or Mizzou last year in the NCAA tournament. There is no more a David versus a Goliath feeling when I'm watching these games. It's just two teams, relatively neutral, and we'll see who comes out on top nowadays. The seeding matters. The teams that are better over the course of the season win more often than not. But the David versus Goliath feeling of the NCAA tournament, for me, it no longer really exists, and I don't think it exists for the players either.
Yeah, and it feels like the seeding doesn't matter as much anymore either, because you always, in the first round of the tournament, you always see some type of double-digit seeded team taking down a higher seed, and it happens multiple times throughout the tournament. The first thing I thought of, and I asked you both this today when I got in, is does this have more to do with the transfer portal or more to do with the lack of star power on the other side? Because when you think of Kentucky, you think of, at least for me, Anthony Davis. You think of these like superstars, these lottery picks in the NBA draft, and I'm not sure if that's the same as much as it used to be right now in terms of one team having all of those guys, mostly because of that transfer portal, but also because you see those guys spread out more in college basketball. And for the longest time, like you mentioned 10 years ago, think of it. It was North Carolina, it was Duke, it was Kansas, and it was Kentucky. Those were the teams that had all of those lottery picks that were a part of them.
Do you know the last time Kentucky had a top 5 pick? A top 5 selection in the NBA draft, the last time that had happened.
Anthony Davis?
It was De'Aaron Fox in 2017. Do you know the last time was that they had a big run in the NCAA tournament?
Was it that year?
It was when they had De'Aaron Fox, a legitimate top 5 selection in the NBA draft. So, yeah, Alex, you're onto something here. Like, it is different, and I do think that Kentucky is trying to build a roster the way that they did in 2017, or the way that they did when they had Devin Booker and the Harrison twins and Jamal Murray and Karl Anthony Towns and Julius Randle and all of these superstars that were one-and-done talents. You can still win that way. Don't get me wrong. It can happen. We're on a one-off year. Everything comes together perfectly. You had this unbelievable recruiting class, and you go on a little bit of a run. But the better and more logical way to build your roster in 2024, given NIL, given the transfer portal, is to go out there and build through a recruiting class, but also piece things together through the portal. Go out there and get 2 or 3 different pieces, not only that can help you right now, but do what Illinois did, where they bring in a guy like Terrence Shannon. They bring in a guy like Danja, and they can be multiple years on your roster, be contributing members of your team for 2024 and 25 and 26. That's the way that a lot of teams that are doing it the best right now are trying to build their roster. Kentucky's behind, man. They have fallen behind in the way that they're trying to build their roster now.
Yeah, and I think you have to have, if you're Kentucky, you have to have a little bit of balance, because that's how Underwood tried it last year. He had a couple of big recruits that came in. Now, granted, he ended up missing on those recruits, but now he's gone to the portal. But I think you can have a nice balance. So, like, Kentucky doesn't just have to all of a sudden become a team that's going to the portal.
Agreed.
They can still go out and get those one-and-done guys, but they just need to supplement them a little bit better through the portal. That I totally agree with. I just think the whole no David versus Goliath anymore in college basketball is, I think all these teams like Oakland, for example, have seen over the last handful of years how all these 14, 15, hell, a 16 seed won a couple years ago. And look at it now and go, man, why do we have to be afraid? You know, basketball is the one sport that I look at in college, and I go, yeah, an upset can happen on any day. It's not like you're going to see an Oakland go to the NCAA tournament final and win it all, but they can pull off an upset on any day because a team can shoot the ball poorly. It doesn't happen in baseball. It doesn't happen in football. It doesn't really happen in hockey because there are more players that can factor into that game and can prevent from a smaller school taking over. In basketball, I think we've just reached the point where everybody goes, man, why do we have to be afraid? You know, we've seen other teams do it. We saw UMBC, which didn't know it was a school until they beat Virginia as a 16 seed.
And I think to that point, especially in basketball, and I saw that a lot in that Oakland game. Now, Kentucky made some shots there late to make it interesting, but, man, you can see teams start to get the yips late in games, especially when you're a high-ranked team. Like Kentucky was just taking bad shot selection at times in that second half yesterday because they could feel the pressure of Oakland on top of them and thinking, man, this is a 14 seed and we're a 3 seed. And I think in basketball, unlike any other sport, you start to get the yips. And when you start taking bad shot selections and start shooting the ball poorly, your team just collapses.
We were lucky, though, that the late games were good. Because otherwise, yesterday was about to be a snooze fest for the vast majority of the day when it came to what we were able to witness.
T-Bone just likes good competition.
Well, no,
but most of it sucked.
I felt like yesterday was like what we get a lot of years. You know, you had a couple of upsets in there.
Years,
you had a couple of bad blowouts, and then you had some really good close games down the stretch. Like Kansas and Samford was good.
But that's what I'm talking about. The late games were excellent, and it saved the day. If we didn't have those games late last night turn out the way that they did, it would have been mostly a snooze fest on the first day of the NCAA tournament.
To that point, because I had the hockey game on yesterday, you know, what I do is I'll look in the second half, and if it's close, I turn that game on. I didn't do that for any game until you got to that Oakland one. Yeah, because all of them were like 20-point difference going into half, and it's like, man, what's going on right now?
There were a couple, and we see this every year, right? This is kind of the way, T-Bone, we were talking about this during the Illinois game yesterday after our show. A couple of the games were like top 3 seeds go into halftime and they're up by 3 against the lesser opponent. And that happens a lot. And then in the second half, I felt like this was going to happen with KU against Samford, and then Samford had that crazy comeback towards the end. But you go into halftime, you're like, okay, yeah, we're up 3, but we've got a couple of adjustments that we can make here. We're going to find our mismatch, and we're going to be able to exploit it in the second half. Illinois did that to a crazy high degree in the second half where they were like, hey, Danger's like 10 times bigger than anybody that Morehead State has to offer. Just get him the ball repeatedly, and let's go to work on the block. Defensively, let's change up a couple of things. We see what they're doing. It's just constant screens, constant screens, constant screens. Do not go under them. They're shooting under those. Just go ahead and go over the screens. We'll find a way to make this work. You adjust defensively, you make a couple adjustments offensively, and you win by 16. That's what we saw most of the day yesterday. Thankfully, the late games, we did get a couple that were highly entertaining, and that's really all we need. You give us like 3 or 4 great games over the course of the day, we're feeling pretty good about it. Coming up later today, my hope is we get at least one buzzer beater. That's the one thing we were missing yesterday.
Yeah, we didn't get one of those,
A great NCAA tournament first round, you need to have at least one buzzer beater that you remember coming out of it. That has to happen. Otherwise, I don't think you could reach the 10 out of 10 experience of NCAA tournament.
That Kansas game felt like it was getting close to it, but then they missed their shot and then it pulled away.
Not only did they miss their shot, the refs screwed it. Oakland won, and then I flip over to that Samford versus Kansas game. It was one of the best blocks that you'll ever see in an NCAA tournament game, given the stakes of what was taking place there. It reminded me of that LeBron block in the Golden State Warriors NBA Finals. It should have been remembered that way, obviously not in a finals game to potentially win it, but that should have been a moment that kid remembered for the rest of his life and that all of us remember, and instead the refs screw it up, they call a foul, and it ends up winning the game for Kansas and not giving the opportunity for Samford to be able to go down and win that game on their own, because the ball had trickled back towards a Samford player who was going to have an opportunity with numbers going the other direction to go up, because they were only down by 1 at that point.
And they would have had a 5-on-4 because that guy fell.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal. T-Bone, I'm curious your thoughts on this. I don't understand why that play is not possible to review. We go to the monitors for everything in college basketball.
Everything.
Dude. The last minute of these games takes 20 minutes in real time, and yet the play that ultimately determined the outcome is not able to be reviewed? That, to me, was crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they need to implement the coach's challenge that you get in the NBA. You know, if you have a timeout, you can take a timeout. You can challenge any play. If you get it right, you maintain the timeout. I think what you do is I think you have that available to you. You have the coach's challenge, and I think you got to start cutting out some of these half-a-second, reviews that they had. In that game last night, you're right. The final minute took forever, and they were reviewing everything. They have the play that goes out of bounds where they throw it off the Samford player. Clearly out of bounds off of Samford. They go back to review to add 0.4 of a second to the clock. There's a jump ball. They go back to review and add like 1/8 of a second to the clock. They've got to cut out some of those smaller reviews, and they've got to go just to the monitor for okay, it's very tight. We really need to see how the out-of-bounds play. And if, it is, very, very tight in the final, 10 seconds, maybe then you start to go for those little tenths of a second that you're looking for. But, yeah, they need to have it challengeable to where you can challenge that play, because that was ultimately the play that ended up losing that game.
I think in the NCAA tournament you should get one coach's challenge in the final 2 minutes.
I don't even care if you had it in the – if you didn't have it in the regular season, I'm fine with that.
I totally agree. The playoffs in a lot of different sports are managed differently than the regular season. The playoffs in the NHL, for example, overtime rules are different than they are during the regular season. I'm fine with it. This is where the games matter the most. This is where legacies are made. This is where jobs are won and or kept or lost. They should be able to have one coach's challenge down the stretch. You get in the final minute, maybe you make it the final 2 minutes of the game, and you're able to go to the monitor for something like what took place yesterday. I don't think it's going to be something that ends up really changing the outcome of games very often, but in this specific situation, it would be something that really would have been meaningful. They would have changed that call. They would not have given that a foul, and it still ends up where you should have had a 5-on-4 situation, and you don't get that if you're Samford last night, but at least you get the ball and you're down by 1.
And for me, and I see this in basketball than any other sport, a lot of it is kind of the action of what you see. I've talked about this a lot. I do play-by-play on the side a lot, and I see it all across every level of college and in high school sports. That play last night, you see him go up for that huge slam. In the way that he falls, you assume that he got grabbed on the arm. Yeah. So it's more of okay, I understand how the ref may have missed that because of how fast that is going. When I couldn't believe it
was a clean block.
Yeah, I thought he fouled him.
We saw yesterday.
I thought he fouled him until they show the replay. But a lot of what happens is you see a lot of this in basketball is just the action of what the player is that you think happened. So they thought he got fouled because his arm was grabbed. No, you go back and you look at the replay, and that's why I think you need the replay to go back and look at it. Clearly a clean block. The reason he falls is because he hits the rim and doesn't really – all his momentum carries him forward. He wasn't fouled.
All right, T-Bone, your Illini win yesterday.
Oh, we're winning it all, baby. First half against Morehead State. I think when they run into a actual, juggernaut offensively, potentially Iowa State, I think they're going to struggle. I really do.
I agree.
I think they could get by, but take the over in the game. I'm not worried about Duquesne. Any team that's going to be a defensive-minded, oriented team, I think if you slow down the Illini, they're going to slow them down to 70, and even then I feel good about them winning because I don't think they can make shots to beat the Illini. Even though the Illini's defense is weaker, I get worried as we start to get deeper into this tournament. Once they start to run in teams that can actually hit their shots and play solid defense, that's when I think the Illini are going to have a struggle because I don't think this team constructed can go on a 5-6 minute run against a really good opponent and slow them down defensively. I just don't think they can. I think you need that in the tournament.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. That's Alex Ferrario, and I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. We've got Ask Us Anything. Excuse me, it's a Friday. I forgot. It's a totally different segment. Ask Us Anything is coming up in about 15 minutes.
I feel like you miss that every week.
One of these days I'm going to figure it out. We're not at our usual spot. We typically go to Centene on Fridays, which helps me out.
That's different.
And today we're broadcasting live from Helen Fitzgerald's. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else in America right now, other than right here at Helen Fitzgerald's, with all of these televisions on for the NCAA tournament action. By the way, a quick update for you in terms of what we've got. We've got one game in action so far. Florida Atlantic is up 8-6. About halfway through the first half against Northwestern. Not a whole lot of offense in that one.
Northwestern.
Hope you took the under.
They're the Illini rivalry.
Coming up next,
supposedly.
What happens if the Cardinals do not put together a top 10 offense this year in Major League Baseball? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Mark Mayhem is here.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. So there's a couple of different rankings that came out earlier today of the best offenses in Major League Baseball, and you know I'm going to poo-poo all over these.
Let me guess, the Cardinals were on it.
They were not. Yeah, it's not good. So MLB.com ranks their top 10 lineups in Major League Baseball. Here is how they had them. Spoiler alert, Cardinals not going to be listed here. Dodgers at number 1, Braves number 2, Astros number 3. Hard to disagree with any of that so far. Rangers at 4, Yankees at 5.
Well, that's if Stanton decides to play this season.
Phillies at 6, and then you have the Orioles, the Rays, the Twins, and the Diamondbacks.
The Twins?
That back half of the top 10, if the Cardinals aren't there this year, something has gone horribly awry, guys.
Whose list was this?
MLB.com. It was by a gentleman by the name of Anthony Castrovin. So actually,
I like Anthony, but woof.
So
no longer
last year, while the he's not a friend of the show any longer. Last year, prior to August 1st, if you go by the nerdy weighted runs created plus, OPS plus, whatever, any of those numbers.
BK will.
I like batting average.
I like
go by that too. We can get into that here in just a second. Whatever the number is metric-wise offensively that you want to look at, the Cardinals were top 6 or 7 in Major League Baseball prior to the trade deadline. Now, I'm using that as my mark of demarcation because Brendan Donovan's arm fell off after that. The Cardinals decided we're not in the race anymore, and so, Goldie barely played. Arenado barely played. The offense wasn't what it was prior to July 31st. After that, they decided to go a different direction, as they should have. Alex, what happens to the Cardinals in 2024 if these lists are correct? By the way, Jim Bowden had them at number 17 in Major League Baseball.
I like how he thinks.
And the Cardinals don't have a top 10 offense this year. What happens?
In the words of the great poet Brad Underwood.
Yes, I was going to use this too.
That's what happens. The season's over. If your offense isn't good, nothing's good about this team. Listen to what John Mozeliak is telling you about the pitching. We're going to get into this later. He's basically telling you our pitching is going to be fine because our offense is going to be great. There's no area. We talk all the time about how teams have success in baseball. You got to be great at something. All of these teams that you listed off are great at one thing or the other. It's either pitching, it's bullpen, it's defense, it's offense. The Cardinals, if they don't have an offense that's in the top 10, that's not competing with the Minnesota Twins, the Diamondbacks, the Tampa Bay Rays, then you're not going to be good at anything this season, and it's going to be another lottery year.
I think it's totally reasonable to expect these teams to be ahead of the Cardinals this year. The Braves, the Dodgers, the Rangers, the Astros, the Phillies, the Orioles. If those 6 teams end up ahead of the Cardinals, it's totally understandable. It's reasonable. Even me, as somebody that is really high on this offense, and maybe just think I'm high either way, I think that it's reasonable to expect those 6 teams to be ahead of the Cardinals. But once you get beyond that, the Cardinals probably should be better offensively this year than the Yankees or the Diamondbacks or the Rays or the Reds or the Padres. These teams all have some star players, don't get me wrong. And the Diamondbacks might have the best player of anybody that I just mentioned with Corbin Carroll and what he can bring.
See, I think they should be competing with the Baltimore Orioles in terms of offense.
They just have so much young star power that might take the next step.
Well, I get it, but you've got the star power too in Walker and Gorman, and we've talked Donovan, and now we're talking about, when you got 2 guys at MVP calibers on your roster, and you've got a Willson Contreras, who was one of the best hitters in the second half in the National League last year, and we've been talking about the star power of Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, you should be competing for a top 5 spot.
I agree, but if you're a little behind Baltimore this year,
Fine.
I don't think it's a death knell for the season.
But a little is different than being a lot behind them.
Correct, and that's why you have to be in that next tier. At a minimum, you've got to be in that range with the Yankees, with the Diamondbacks, with the Rays, with the Reds, with the Padres, etc. Whoever you think is going to be in that 7 to 10 range. If you're not there, either there were injuries that caught up to you, or this offense wasn't as good as we all made it out to be. This season's going to be a disaster, and the Cardinals are going to be a seller at the deadline, and this model that the Cardinals have been trying to make work, that they went through last season and said that was a one-off, they will be forced to acknowledge our model is broken and we need to start anew. You need to trade Goldie at the deadline. You trade Arenado at the deadline. You trade off your old veteran starters, and you decide, you know what, the Cardinals are going to have to do what the Blues are doing right now, which is a full-blown retool. They are not bad enough to go through a rebuild. They will not and should not tank. There is no ability for them to do so. They're not bad enough because they have too many good young players right now, position player-wise. But they will be going through a retool very similar to what the Blues are going through right now if this doesn't work. So, what happens if you don't have a top 10 offense this year? Everything blows up. That is what's at stake this year.
Blow it up.
Offense.
Blow it up. Blow it.
No.
Okay.
You know how long the summer's going to be if they have to blow it up?
Yeah,
God, last year was long.
We
Yeah,
just
I know.
lived it last year.
It was brutal.
But you got the draft in the NHL to get excited about.
No.
The difference
We're not
though is
even going
last
to
year
Vegas.
was a one-off, potentially. If it happens again, now it's a trend.
And my fear, and this is going to kind of pivot from the offense, but my fear is, we talk about why the Blues can retool, right? The Blues can retool because they've got incredible goaltending. Guys, if the Cardinals are going to retool, they may not have the pitching for a retool.
Well,
it may become a rebuild because if they have to blow it up, quote unquote, they're not going to bring back Gibson, I hope. They're not going to bring back Lynn, I hope. And you look at their minor league system, all of a sudden you got to start throwing in a tin can.
They would have to reallocate the money from Goldie and Arenado to their rotation.
Or you get
and that means a complete change in the way that they operate. That's the thing.
But you'd get some pitchers in return, you would imagine, for Goldie and Arenado.
Probably young, though, and there's a lot of risk in that. Like, you don't know how those are going to turn out. Even the best starting pitching prospects could end up becoming Alex Reyes.
See, I was looking at this a little differently. If that happens, doesn't it make you concerned about the pieces you have on the offensive side beyond Goldie and Arenado?
Potentially. I think it would happen. I think the biggest risk that the Cardinals have this year is health. And we've already seen that happen with the 4 injuries that are going to linger into the regular season, 2 of which are on the position player side of things. Their biggest risk is Goldie, the back issues start to kind of come back up, and it tails off on the offensive side of things.
Good thing he's the only one that has back issues.
Gorman has back issues. Brendan Donovan coming back from the elbow surgery. Maybe Edmund never becomes what they hoped that he would be in center field because of the wrist issue. Arenado's been dealing with some lingering stuff. Like, if all of that bears its ugly head this year, then they're going to have a problem offensively, and it's going to be more than just the 2 older guys that you're having as your pillars that potentially weren't able to bolster you over the course of the season. But top 10 offense is the bare minimum. If they don't have that this year, the whole build has gone awry. One other thing to mention here, Katie Wu put together her opening day roster prediction for 2024. It included basically everybody that you expect. We all know it's really one roster spot that we're talking about here, and that's who's going to be your open
bullpen guy.
Well, there is one bullpen arm that is potentially up for grabs, but we all agree it's going to be Ryan Fernandez, right? The Rule 5 guy. When they had Keenan Middleton go down, that essentially opened up his roster spot.
Andre Palante?
Andre Palante is going to be in there as well. Yeah.
Whoa. That's a dangerous
He's actually
bullpen.
getting righties out now.
Yeah, he's been good. The one roster spot that's truly up for grabs is center field.
Oh.
And it's either going to be Michael Ciani as a backup or Victor Scott as your
There's
starter.
no either. It's Michael Ciani as a backup.
Shit, Alec Burleson, Dylan Carlson, Jordan Walker, and Michael Ciani. With the starting outfield, including Dylan Carlson on opening day.
So Sinise didn't make it?
No, he didn't.
He did, Ciani. I think that's where I'm at right now, too. If I had to project what the opening day roster would be, it would not include Victor Scott, unfortunately, and it would include Michael Ciani.
And they'll sell it as Dylan Carlson won that job, and rather than have Victor Scott sit on the bench,
Correct.
Michael Ciani's there. And again, I think you're selling me something that I'm not willing to buy, because Victor Scott won the position with his defense and his base running. Dylan Carlson won himself a spot in the opening day lineup because of his bat.
I also wonder if some of this is related to Alec Burleson. For as much as we're talking about Carlson versus Scott, Carlson's in the lineup no matter what. He's probably in your opening day lineup either in center or in left. I think what could be happening here is because Alec Burleson has had such a great spring at the plate, they want him to be in the lineup every day, and to do so, it requires you to have him as your DH. And that puts Brendan Donovan in left, Dylan Carlson in center. So it really becomes a question of Scott versus Burleson in your lineup, more so than it is Scott versus Carlson.
The reason I don't know about that is because they keep everything that's coming from Cardinals camp all of a sudden is, hey, don't sleep on Matt Carpenter getting starts. And if that's the case, well, Burley's not going to be the DH, and they don't want to run him out in left field.
I can't wait when Lars Newbart comes back, and they're like, well, we can't take anybody out of the lineup right now. We're too good.
I just totally disagree with the way they're approaching the Scott situation. The Cardinals, you want to talk about a theme of their offseason? The theme for the St. Louis Cardinals in the offseason and the way that they've approached spring training has been more worried about the future than it is the current. And the current is what's going to determine the future. But, we can forget about that. So.
If you ever do something where you get hurt, Alex will laugh at you.
Yeah, true.
He scorpioned over the scoreboard table and hit his head on the chair.
A Northwestern player. Oh, man, this game is...
You only laugh when they get up.
This is an ugly basketball game right now between Florida Atlantic and Northwestern. It's 16-12. There's 3 minutes left in the first half.
I think our guy Patrick took the over. He looks pretty sad.
So, if you're not watching, what just took place is one of the Northwestern players was trying to save the ball from going out of bounds. He's going towards the scorer's table, and it does save it. I think he was able to do that. However, as he reached out one leg, he tripped over the scorer's table, went head first underneath it. It looked like he was going into the boards in a hockey game, essentially. His neck, crumbled in. Couldn't really tell if he was going to get up or not. It looked to be a potentially serious. Oh my God! Somebody just got rocked again. What's happening? It appeared to be a potentially serious injury, and Alex is over here just dying laughing, dying laughing.
You can hear his giggle.
We got a rule in the Ferrario family, and my wife learned this very early on when we started dating because she fell in front of me and my dad. And the rule is, if you're moving when you fall, meaning there's movement in your body, then you're allowed to be laughed at.
Okay.
And so,
what if you're crying?
No, it doesn't matter. You should be crying from embarrassment that you fell.
Pain.
Katie, no joke, fell when one of the first months of us dating, and both my dad and I laughed.
And the fact that she didn't break up with you meant
very
important. That's when you knew.
But then as it went along, my mom had fallen out of the car in the garage, and both my wife and I laughed at her. So
we were on vacation in high school, and my mom was walking to bed and broke her toe on the bed, the corner of the bed at the hotel. I lost it. And it was definitely broken. She had to go to the doctor whenever we got back. It was the whole thing. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, go ahead and get them in now. From the 314, guys more likely to happen, the Cardinals or the Cubs win a World Series in the next 5 years?
This was Ask Us Anything.
I know, Alex. Just go ahead and go with it.
In how many years?
5.
I'd say the Cardinals.
I agree.
We have no pitching.
They don't either.
Have you seen their rotation?
Yeah, they got Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga.
We got
Gray and Kyle Gibson, Sonny Gray,
and Kyle Hendricks. So I know we're not beating them in the playoffs.
And so Kyle Gibson versus Kyle Gibson. Kyle versus Kyle Hendricks.
Kyle Gibson.
It's the Spider-Man name. They're the same thing.
Combined them. Well, I would give the Cubs the advantage on that one because Kyle Hendricks pitches well against the Cardinals. So
he's Cy Young against the Cardinals every time.
I would actually probably say the Cardinals, even though I don't think either would do it. My reasoning for it would be the fact that when you look at the Cubs, their core is not intact right now. What I mean by that is they're not under contract. Yep. Cody Bellinger's got an opt-out. Justin Steele's the only guy that's kind of locked up in Imanaga. But position player-wise, they don't have
Armstrong.
Yeah, but we don't know how he's going to play yet. Right. Walker, is with the Cardinals for the next 5-6 years. Yep. Same with Mason Wynn. Same with Victor Scott when he gets up here if he can play. And some of the other guys like Nolan Gorman. He's here for the next 3 years.
Do you think they regret not giving Chris Bryant the contract?
No,
he's been terrible.
Has he?
He's been hurt. He can't stay healthy in Colorado.
Yep. I think the guy they regret moving on from, and they could have just tendered him a contract, was Kyle Schwarber.
Oh, yeah.
Schwarber was the mistake. They knew he was a gamer. They loved him there in Chicago. I understand there were some issues there, but
he couldn't stay healthy either there for them, too.
But it was just cost-cutting measure. That's all it was. It was coming out of the pandemic. They were like, we don't want to pay the whatever it was. I think it was like $18 million or something. It was similar to what the Dodgers did with Cody Bellinger, honestly.
Well, that one made sense.
The Dodgers at least had a good team around him. They had a way to make up for it. They had, Mookie Betts, and they were trying to position themselves to be able to get Shohei Ohtani the next offseason. Meanwhile, the Cubs didn't have anybody in place to replace what Kyle Schwarber was for them, and, he just went on to be a significant piece of one of the best teams in the National League for the last couple of seasons.
Not that big of a deal. What's he done with it?
All right, from the 636, Alex, BK, how do you guys stay in shape while having young children at home?
I don't stay in shape.
I don't think this is for you, buddy.
Yeah. I don't stay in shape. What are you talking about? I get winded when I walk upstairs.
I run. I run a lot.
I don't.
And trying to find time to run has become increasingly difficult with a child.
When you have two of them, it is like lifting weights because both want to be held, and so you pick one up, you put one down, you pick one up, you pick one down.
Yep.
That's how. And then irritable bowel syndrome is how I stay in shape.
It is crazy how much I was so incredibly sore when I first brought we first brought Luca home. I would be like moving around, whether it's my lower back or my shoulders.
I would say the two strongest parts of my
me?
body are my lower back and my shoulders for how many times you lift
absurd.
and hold them up.
All right, from the 636, guys, how different would the opening drive's Ask Uncle Randy segment be if it was hosted by Tanner instead of Randy? Not different at all. It would be the same.
It'd be fantastic. We should have an Ask T-Bone segment.
Uncle Tanner would make me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it'd be the same conversations.
Yeah, it'd be the same.
No, it would just be uncomfortable calling you Uncle Tanner. Uncle Randy's uncomfortable, but like Uncle Tanner's even more uncomfortable.
Why?
It's just that uncle thing, you know?
Weird. What if we said it was like Ask Brother T?
Oh, my God. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line to get involved in the show. Does Joel Hofer's performance recently change the outlook for what the goalie situation should be in future years? It's a question that Alex asked us before the show. I will be very interested to hear his answer. Is he ready to give up on his boy Benner because of what Hofer has done? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Congratulations.
This is a quote from Andy Reid to his punter, Dustin Colquitt, who used to play for the Chiefs. Quote, "You went to the Pro Bowl. We don't have much to say to you, but don't lose your butt. Punters have to have big butts. As soon as you start to look like you're going downhill from a physique standpoint, you're out of here. So keep that ass."
Hockey players need it too.
Thank you for that. 1 minute.
You're welcome. Bradford, keep that in the back of your mind moving forward. It's from a profile over on The Athletic. Bradford, get it back. The most read story on The Athletic right now is titled, "A High Butt Factor Might Be the NFL Draft's Most Prized Asset." You get it? Honestly, great line. It's the most read story right now on The Athletic. Oh, here we go, Colgate. Did you say baby got back then? T-Bone doesn't even know that that's a song. I can't wait to go home. Me too, man. Man, I can't eat meat today, and I want chicken wings. I won't tell you. I like the way you think. But when I go home smelling like buffalo wing sauce, Jason's gonna be like, "What's that?" "Oh, I had French fries."
There we go. That's totally racist.
Joel Hofer is putting together one hell of a rookie season for the St. Louis Blues, alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, and 23 starts for the Blues this year. He has a .916 save percentage. He's allowed just over 2.7 goals on average per game. Alex, if you're looking for Blues goalies in the last 15, 20 years that have performed up to these standards as a rookie, it's only 3 players so far. It's Jordan Binnington, it's Joel Hofer, and it's Jake Allen. Those are the only 3 rookie goalies that have done something like this for the Blues in the last 17 seasons. What does Hofer's performance mean for the Blues in the long term, though? Does this change at all your outlook for that position?
Man, I and people know me, I'm a huge Jordan Binnington fan. I would sit there and say, yeah, it doesn't do anything for you. It just means you got an awesome tandem moving forward. But the reason I presented this to you guys is because our Blues producer, Grant Francis, brought this up to me last night on postgame. And he said, man, if Joel Hofer puts this together for the rest of the season, do you go into the offseason considering looking to trade Jordan Binnington? And although I would automatically say no, and my reasoning behind it is, I don't know if Joel Hofer can withstand a season where he plays 50 to 55 games. Right now, you're seeing him playing 26. By the end of the season, I would anticipate he plays maybe 30 games. I don't know if that can, in one season, turn into, yeah, I can play 55 to 60 games for you. And if he can't, you got to go find a backup goaltender who not only can be good for you, but can come in and play 40-something games for you next season. And as we saw last season, backup goaltenders aren't easy to find, hence Thomas Greiss looking terrible most of the season for the Blues. So I would say no to it. But to play devil's advocate on the other side, man, if Joel Hofer puts together a season where he plays 28 games and has close to a .920 save percentage, you know you got something special. And at 23 years old, that's a guy that you can project to say in 2 years, he's going to be the #1 goaltender and could be like a Thatcher Demko, Jake Ottinger. And not only would I have the ability to open up $6 million, but imagine the haul that you could get for Jordan Binnington this season, because you're going into an offseason trading a goaltender who would be one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League by the end of the season. And going into this offseason, there's going to be 3 guys that everybody's going to be looking at. It's going to be Jussi Saros, it's going to be Jacob Markstrom, and that's it. Jordan Binnington, if his name is in that race, man, if you want to expedite this retool, that might be the way to do it if you go down that path.
So I was just about to say I wouldn't do it, because I think, though in theory, there is the idea of, hey, we can find another backup goalie. Maybe Zarenko comes up and takes that role, or you go out and sign a backup. I think we're overselling how unusual it is for a kid 23 years old and Joel Hofer to take the backup role and actually look like a starting caliber NHL goalie. Typically, they don't end up working out that way, and as you saw the Thomas Greiss backup experience, sometimes that does not work out very
Jake
well.
Jake Ottinger did it 2 years ago.
That's fair, but I think there is more of a risk of, when I talked about trading Buchnevich this year, that's a lot easier to replace, finding someone of that kind of caliber to replace, and you're more likely to hit on that than you are a goalie. And I think there is more of a chance that if you traded Jordan Binnington, in theory, to expedite the retool, I think there's a chance you set yourself back and end up, I wouldn't call yourself pushing into a rebuild, but I think instead of saying, oh, hey, we're going to expedite this by 2 years, you set yourself back by 2 years, because now you have just one goalie and you wear Joel Hofer out.
To put this into a little bit of comparison, and this is why I would not do it either, because I don't believe Joel Hofer is ready. He has not seen the ups and downs of a season. Thatcher Demko was 28 years old. He didn't become the #1 goaltender for Vancouver until he was 26 years old. He played 4 seasons where he was the backup and the third-string goalie with Vancouver before they took the leash off.
Alex, I'm going to give you the list of rookies that started at least 25 games and had a save percentage of .915 or better. So essentially did in their rookie season what we have seen so far from Joel Hofer this year. This is in the last decade, okay? Tell me if you feel like there's like a common theme here at all. Peter Mrazek.
Yeah, became a bust.
Connor Hellebuck.
He's pretty good.
Jonas Korpisalo.
Jonas Korpisalo, he's a bust. He's the backup in Ottawa now.
John Gibson.
I would kind of call him a bust now.
Matt Murray.
Bust.
Bust.
Carter Hart.
Well, he's not playing right now because of allegations.
Benner.
Bust.
What?
Mackenzie Blackwood.
Billy Husso's a bust. He's a bust.
Elvis
Merzlikins. Bust.
Igor Shesterkin.
He's pretty darn good.
Logan Thompson.
Who's Logan Thompson?
He's Vegas' like third goalie in their three-headed monster that they use.
Gotcha.
I don't feel comfortable in him being my number one goalie.
I just read you 11 names. 3 of them are objectively really good.
Yep.
That's why you don't do this. Because you're totally right, Alex. He could become the next Connor Hellebuck. He likely will become the next Jake Allen.
Yeah.
And if that's the route that this goes, that's a really good outcome. If you can develop another Jake Allen to be the number 2 or the 1B, however you want to call it, I think Benner, and we've talked about this all year long, I think Benner's at his best when he's got some rest in the regular season, and then you let him go do his thing in the playoffs.
By the way, that's not just a Benner thing. I think goalies are at their best unless you're Hellebuck or Andrei Vasilevsky, as long as they play somewhere between 50 and 55 games.
It's like starting pitching in Major League Baseball. I think some starters, you throw them 180 innings in the regular season, and then they just wear out by the time you get to the postseason. Yeah. Whereas there are very few, there are some guys that, hey, they could throw 200 innings in the regular season, and then they just, like, they're Madison Bumgarner. They get better as they go along.
Wheeler, another one of those.
It's incredibly rare, and I don't think Benner's one of those guys. No shot against him. There's very few of them, and there's very few ever that can be fit into that category. So if you're going to be able to develop right now a future Jake Allen for you, man, think about how valuable that could be to pair with Jordan Binnington as he continues to age. I'm not getting rid of Benner. I'm just going to go ahead and build with these two guys in my future plans so I never get into a situation like what we see dozens of other contenders or would-be contenders across the NHL who continue year after year after year to try to piecemeal this thing together at goalie. Look at New Jersey right now, dude. They're picking in the top 10 despite having a really good roster because their goaltending situation is abysmal. Look at Ottawa, man. That Ottawa team is talented. They've got some players up there, but they have no goaltending and haven't for years. Detroit, they got some talent. No goaltending for years. I don't want to get into a situation where I feel like I bought into a number 1 goalie, but in reality he's more of a 1B, and you have forced him into that role of being the 1A. I'm keeping Benner around. This is not changing anything for me other than to know I have my number 2 goalie for not just 2024, but for years to come.
For people that get antsy with this and think, oh, this is how you get the retool faster and you can get great players for Jordan Binnington, the timing on this is perfect in terms of goaltending. Binnington has 3 more years of his contract left at $6 million. Joel Hofer's entry-level contract, I believe, is up in 2 years. This was his first, or no, they signed him to an extension, so I think he's on a minimum contract for 2 more years. Joel Hofer will be 26 years old when Binnington's contract is up. This feels a lot like what it was when Binnington and Jake Allen were the tandem, where Binnington came up, it was the 50-50 split, and then Binnington took it, ran the rest of the way. The next season, Binnington was the number 1, and Allen played 24, and then Allen was a free agent, and they traded him to the Montreal Canadiens. This seems a lot like what Doug Armstrong's trying to accomplish. Yep. Hofer's a backup for a couple of years, and then that final year when Hofer seems like he's ready to go, a 50-50 split, and maybe Binnington gets a change of scenery, or maybe he finishes his career in St. Louis. But you don't get antsy with this area because you're great in it and try and trade to get better. You keep that area and make changes elsewhere so you could get better in front of the area that you're already great in.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. We've got Bradford Bruns back in the studio for us today. We are broadcasting live out at Helen Fitzgerald's. Come on out, say hello, grab yourself an ice-cold Bud Light. Watch the games. We got all the games going on right now. Baylor up 38-23 against Colgate. About 5 minutes left in the first half in that one. We also have Florida Atlantic with a slim margin, a 20-19 lead at halftime. That has been an ugly basketball game so far in the first half, but FAU is up 20-19. Come on out, say hello, grab a cold Bud Light. We got some giveaways going on. We'll be out here until 2 o'clock. T-Bone and Alex are going to stick around for a little while after that, and then the Fast Lane will be broadcasting live here until 6. We're brought to you by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Coming up next, we're going to get through some NCAA tournament quick hitters, some of our reaction to the games that took place yesterday, some projection for what we're going to see later on this afternoon. We'll get to all of that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. bet on any games either.
He couldn't take the stress of being a college student and said it's over.
Okay.
Been there.
That's why he went to Nashville.
Yeah.
He went on a vacation and decided now is the time. Okay.
Vacation.
Sure.
But it's just like Vegas. They say Nashville's
I'll watch
like
the
Vegas.
Netflix documentary.
They say Nashville's like Vegas. It's what you do in Vegas.
Thank you, Bradford. Appreciate at least one person on this broadcast being a pro.
Okay.
Two. Tanner's a pro, too.
Okay. So that just means you and I aren't pros?
Correct.
I'm just here for entertainment, guys.
What happened? You guys like to say something bad over YouTube?
Did we?
Technically, it's allowed, so. As long as you don't drop an F-bomb in your first minute of YouTube, you're fine.
They can't hear the volume on YouTube anyway.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It is time for some NCAA tournament quick hitters. We got to go through some of our biggest observations from the tournament yesterday. We'll get into what we're projecting for later on today as well. Alex, we'll start with the headliner, which was Kentucky losing in the first round of the tournament again, this time against Oakland. They lose 80-76 last night. One player on Oakland had 10 three-pointers. I saw earlier this morning he dribbled the basketball a total of 3 times over the course of the game.
He didn't shoot anywhere in front of the three-point line.
Correct, which is a good way to go about it if you're Oakland, and if he makes 10 of them, you feel pretty good about your opportunity to win there. Alex, there's a lot of conversation today, and I think it's justified about Calipari and whether or not he's going to be the long-term answer in Kentucky, or if they need to fire him and spend, I think it's $30 million on his buyout. Do you feel like they should be looking in a new direction, or do you run it back one more time?
I mean, I think you should be looking in a new direction. When you lose to double-seeded team or double-digit seeded teams back-to-back years, I think that's cause for concern. I don't think they will do it, and I don't think you should do it if you're talking about $30 million. And, I mean, when it comes to college basketball, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the longest tenured head coach with a university in college basketball, correct?
I think Izzo's been there longer.
Oh, okay, so Izzo. But, yeah, I mean, you're talking about
Mark Few's been there longer, but, I mean, he's
up there with those. I mean, I don't think I know he's not in terms of, like, success-wise the Nick Saban of college basketball, but I think in Kentucky they view him as the Nick Saban of college basketball, so I don't think they'll fire him.
I think Kentucky fans are the ones that want him out. I don't think
makes
Kentucky
sense
fans
after
want him there
back-to-back
anymore.
bad years.
To be fair, Alabama fans wanted Saban out after he wouldn't make the playoffs.
Very true.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's been almost a decade. There are some similarities to the Cardinals here. Like, 2015, they go to the Final Four.
They should give him an extension?
Since then, round 2, Elite 8, Sweet 16, Elite 8. Didn't make it. Round 1, round 2, round 1. The last time they made the Final Four was 2015, man. Last time the Cardinals won 100 games in the regular season was 2015. It's been a minute since Kentucky was what we think of Kentucky as being. They're still a good team. It's not like this is a team that's going through the motions and struggling to get to the tournament. They've been a 3, a 6, and a 2 seed over the last 3 seasons. They're getting there. They're just getting beat when they get to the tournament.
I'd say the SEC is soft then.
Well, I don't know if you make a change. I do think there does have to be a conversation with Calipari about the way they're building these teams. I just think it's not. Honestly, I don't even know if it's how you're building the team, because I think the one-and-done model can still work. I really do. You just got to
2024.
Yeah, you just got to get the NBA caliber player. You got to get superstars. You're saying it's tough to do this, but if they had a talent of a Karl Anthony Towns-esque with a Devin Booker-esque player, one and done, they could still win the NCAA tournament.
No.
I think they can. I think the one-and-done model still works. I think
Transfer
he just hasn't gotten the
everything.
players.
NIL changed everything.
No,
I don't think you can do it anymore.
I think if you find the superstar, you can do it, but you have to build with that superstar.
Look at the teams that they had that did it. Most of the teams that they did it with also had sophomores that returned.
Yeah, you have to put a cast around them, but I think you can do it if you still get that superstar.
They're not doing
talent.
that. Like, look at their team this year. It was almost exclusively freshmen. I think they had like 2 sophomores on the roster, and I think they had 2 transfers on the entirety of the roster.
I don't think they had a player, though, that's considered to go in the draft this year.
They did. They've got some of them that are like lottery picks. I don't think they have anybody that's going to go top 5, and that's the problem. Like, you need to get the top 5 pick, which requires you to hit on somebody from your recruiting class, which is easier said than done. And you need some of that help around them, which I think the easiest way to find that is by going out and getting guys in the portal that have shown an ability to do it at this level already. They should be scouting all of these games that are taking place over the next couple of days, saying, hey, who are the guys that are playing right now that can help us next year? But that's not the way that he operates, man. He goes to the high school ranks, looks at the list of rivals, tries to find as many of the top 20 players in the country as he can that will coalesce together or not over the course of a regular season. I don't think it works. I don't think you can win that way in 2024 anymore. I don't think, given what we have available to us in the transfer portal, the NIL, guys are staying in college longer than ever before because they can make money now in college. I don't think you can operate this way and continue to win the way that they did whenever they were winning titles at Kentucky. I would need to know one of two things. One, Cal's going to change the way that he operates, or he's got to go. I think that's what's got to happen this offseason. He either has to change his fundamental belief of how to build a roster, or we have to go in a new direction at Kentucky. All right, let's continue along here. Some more of the quick hitters from yesterday in the NCAA tournament. When you think back to that day in the tournament, what's the game that you'll remember?
Is it weird that I'm going to remember that Kansas-Samford game?
Totally
I
fair.
think that's the one that was the most – I mean, obviously everybody's going to pick that Oakland game, but, man, that Kansas-Samford game, I really thought Samford was going to beat Kansas. And I go into that next game, Gonzaga just wiped the floor with McNeese, where I think everybody was picking McNeese to win that game. That is probably the matchup going into the next round of 4 versus 5 that I don't feel great about either of those teams in that matchup. And I'm going to remember that game because Samford was so close to being that Cinderella team that nobody was going to be talking about, not only taking down Kansas, but potentially having a path to get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Oakland game. I know it's the chalk answer. The reason I think the Samford one I wouldn't put in that category is I think eventually people are going to forget about it. I know that there's the missed call, but even when you have big-time controversial calls, they sometimes start to disappear. You know, you kind of forget about them because I'm sure there's been some that have happened in years past that we haven't brought up. I think it's the Oakland one. Oakland beating Kentucky and this Jack Golke guy hitting 10 3-pointers. That's going to be something that's going to be remembered for a really long time because I think he was the first double-digit seeded player to put up, I think it was 5 3-pointers in a game since Steph Curry.
Do you forget
we remember
Oakland
Steph Curry
loses the next game?
No, I think you remember it because, well, maybe. I don't know. Because, Steph Curry, we remember that Dayton team. They went to the Sweet 16.
I know that's a 16 seed,
yeah.
but
I think
you remember
them.
Lehigh, you remember Norfolk State, unfortunately. Like, when you get a game like this, you tend to remember the team that pulled off a shocking upset.
Yeah, I think it'll stick around. I think you'll remember it. I think you'll always be able to look back on that one. To me, that's the only game because I think if
there's
Samford
one other.
completed it
I think there's one other, and it's because of the comeback that took place. No, hell no.
Oh, God, no.
It's Dayton finding a way to come back against Nevada.
Yeah.
Dayton was down in this game, man, 56-39. I turned the game off because I was like, oh, there's no reason to watch this anymore. They're so far behind. I'm going to go to something else. 7:14 to play. They're down by 16 points. They come back, and with the last couple of minutes, I look up at the score, and I'm like, wait, this game is tied? How? How did that happen? So Nevada deserves a lot of criticism for just totally fumbling the bag, but also Dayton deserves a lot of credit for finding a way to come back in that one. So that would be the other game that I would point to that you're going to remember.
I'll tell you another one, and I don't know if you'll remember it, but the Tennessee game against St. Peter's, I know it was a 2 versus 15, but no, I'm just saying, that might be the game that you're like, damn, Tennessee is better than people gave them credit for.
Sure. I've got them in my Final Four.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that might be one of those games. If they take down Purdue, you might look back to the first game and be like, man, that should have probably been you put 83 points up, and I get it, it's 2 versus 15, but if I'm not mistaken, that's the biggest difference in terms of an outcome we saw yesterday.
I tend not to take a whole lot from games like that where, by the second half, nobody was trying. They all knew what the deal was.
Hey, everybody's trying.
All right, what's your upset pick for today? You guys are going into it, and Alex, you know how I operate here.
Yeah.
It's not just you can't pick New Mexico over Clemson. New Mexico is the
favorite.
favorite.
Are they a lower seed?
They are an 11 seed in that one. but they are favored against Clemson, so you can't have New Mexico. That's not an option. If you're going by the Vegas lines, what's your upset pick for today?
I'm trying to look at the one that I have, the biggest
I've got
upset.
James Madison. I'll start. James Madison over Wisconsin. That's the 12 seed over the 5 later on this afternoon.
I guess the biggest one I have is Grand Canyon taking down St. Mary's. 12 over a 5. Unless that's not an upset considered by BK with his Vegas odds.
It's not by me. It's by Vegas, man.
I like both of those because I think both those could happen. I'd also bring up Vermont. Vermont against Duke. We talked about it. The ACC, not very strong. Don't know how you feel about that Duke squad. I can see where Vermont starts to hit some shots, stays in that game. I would put the Duke Blue Devils on upset watch.
I got a ton of upsets. I got Colorado beating Florida.
They're favored.
No, they're not. It's a lower seed. Never mind. That's the only one I have. No, I have UAB over San Diego State.
They're not favored. That's a legitimate upset.
That
So you had all of the 12 seeds.
Yeah,
on.
No, I didn't have James Madison. Okay. I had Wisconsin.
All right, so you're gonna get all of them, but that one wrong. Good.
No, I'm gonna
Good
get
to
all
know.
of them
Good to
right.
know. Quick update: Northwestern is up 24-22 with about 18 minutes to play in the second half. Just a slight lead there for Northwestern. They've come out to be the better team so far early in the second half. They've gone on a 9-2 run to start out the second half. FAU is just 1 for 10 from beyond the arc, and we have gone to the half. Baylor absolutely dominating against Colgate. It's 54-34 at the half. Baylor well in front in that one. In about 15 minutes, we'll tip off with the next game with San Diego State taking on UAB, a game that Alex likes UAB to be able to win.
Got that 10-leg parlay started, baby. The Circa Sports Illinois app.
Coming up next, the Cardinals are selling us on quality starts. You buying it? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
over today. I'm shunning my entire family until tomorrow. Man, I freaking called Patrick had the over in that game. I saw his face. I know what the face of a man that made a bad bet looks like.
Yeah. And when you know it immediately, we're like, I've made a terrible mistake.
I'm an idiot. Mostly because I do it all the time.
Yeah, that feeling was a little too familiar, huh?
Yeah, it brought back bad memories.
Remind me of my bet at Stetson State yesterday. Or Long Beach State. That's who it was. Long Beach State.
Bad bet, man.
Yeah.
There's no alliteration. Kind of. Neighbors, notch.
Jackson Holiday reassigned to minor league camp.
Ooh.
Yeah, it felt like they were going to do that.
What is this piece? 3 trades I'd like to see in the NHL offseason. Oh, off-season content. You can hear that puck drop.
Patrick just looked at his phone and shook his head.
What?
Patrick just looked at his phone and shook his head.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
really not going
That
well
parlay
over
is
there.
gone.
There's probably multiple parlays dead already.
Poor guy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So Derek Gould had a great piece earlier today in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, breaking down why the Cardinals believe this year will be different from their rotation. I'm not telling you got to buy it, but this is their perspective on why this is going to work out.
Oh, I can't wait for this one, T-Bone.
I call this BK Reads from Derek Gould. According to Baseball Prospectus, there were more than 1,600 quality starts in 2023. Only about 10% of those ended up being exactly 6 innings and 3 earned runs. That is technically the definition of a quality start. The frequency of quality starts across Major League Baseball is currently plummeting. The value of them, though, has never been higher, according to Derek Gould. A team that receives a quality start from its starter won 70% of those games last year, which was the second highest rate in the last 25 seasons. From 2018 to 2023, so over the past 5 seasons, there are 33 different starters that have 65 or more quality starts. 33 starters, 65 or more quality starts over the last 5 years. Among those 33 starters, 4 of them are slated to be in the Cardinals rotation in 2024. It's Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, Miles Michaelis, and Sonny Gray. He continues, quote, quantity of innings isn't everything, but it is a start, end quote. Now, there are some quotes from John Mozeliak. There are some quotes from Bill DeWitt Jr., Ollie Marmol. There's even some quotes from Alex Cora, the Boston Red Sox manager, on the value of getting innings and getting quality starts out of your starting pitchers. When I look back last year at the teams that got the most quality starts out of their rotation in Major League Baseball, only one of the top 4 teams ended up making it to the playoffs, and it was the Minnesota Twins.
Oh. Okay.
But beyond that, out of the next 10, all of them made the playoffs. So you've got the Twins, the Blue Jays, the Astros, the Phillies, the Brewers, Orioles, Rangers, and Braves.
Did the Brewers really make the playoffs, or were they just gifted the playoffs?
So that's where we're looking at right now with the quality start metric. The Cardinals are leaning on it in a significant way. They believe getting 6 innings out of their starters, that's going to be their way forward. Alex, T-Bone, text line at 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Are you believing it?
No. Correct me if I'm wrong. Quality starts are 6 innings and 3 or less earned runs.
Correct.
That's where I'm not buying it. I mean, to me, what he's saying there, and I'm reading in between the Mo lines, is our pitching's going to give us 6 innings of work. We hope they give us 3 or less earned runs, but we need innings. Our offense is going to carry us. And this is my concern you're relying so much on your offense to carry you this season. I can't buy into the fact that they're expecting that many quality starts from these guys. I mean, I understand that Lance Lynn did it, and Kyle Gibson did it last season, and Miles Michaelis did it last season, and Sonny Gray did it last season. But when I look at those two guys, I don't look at two players and say they're going to be able to give me 6 innings of work consistently and only give up 3 earned runs.
Would you feel differently if Aaron Nola was in this rotation instead of Miles Michaelis, let's say?
Yes.
T-Bone?
I would too, because I think you had a 1-2 punch.
They had the same number of quality starts last year.
Who, Michaelis and Nola?
Does that surprise you?
Not really, because, I mean, both had higher ERAs, but both guys 8 innings last year.
What if I told you that Kyle Gibson had more quality starts last year?
Now that would surprise
than
me.
Aaron Nola.
It would surprise me, but
Aaron Nola had 15 quality starts a year ago. Kyle Gibson had 17, so did Sonny Gray.
But I also wouldn't buy into him doing that again this season.
But, I mean, you can make an argument. Kyle Gibson actually had a quote-unquote down season last year by ERA metrics.
I get it. I just, a year older, coming to this team where we're still not comfortable with their defense, especially in the outfield. And let's be honest, that's where the ball's going to be going when Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are pitching, is into the outfield.
You can't catch it when it's over the wall, but yeah, you're right.
That's very true. But either way, that's not a quality start. I understand that's what they did last year, but that was on a different team. And I've seen the pitching with this team, and I'm not confident that they're going to be able to provide that many quality starts.
I just find it to be really interesting, man. Like, I'm with you guys. I am so unbelievably skeptical of their plan. But I always find it interesting when a team has a plan and it kind of zigs while everybody else is zagging. And the Cardinals have that right now. Now, I'm not telling you should buy it, that you should believe it. I don't believe it. I told you that I thought the Cardinals all offseason, just go get Blake Snell. Just go get Blake Snell. Just go get Blake Snell. And by the way, for all of the concern about Blake Snell in terms of the innings, Blake Snell a year ago had 20 quality starts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, innings were a problem for him, don't get me wrong. But he was going 6 in 20 of his 32 starts, which was more than Gibson, Sonny Gray, Michaelis, or Lynn. All of those guys had fewer quality starts last year than Blake Snell. In fact, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, Merrill Kelly, Seth Lugo, Jesus Luzardo, all of these dudes, fewer quality starts last year than Blake Snell. So that would have been my preferred route. But the Cardinals very clearly have an idea in their mind of what a starting rotation should look like right now. And they'll tell you that the leadership is the stuff that they're valuing with these older starters, right? I think that's nonsense. I think that's just what they're saying, so that way they don't talk ill of their young starters. I think Lance Lynn's been telling you what they really want out of their starters. Lance Lynn's been telling everybody that will listen, young starters don't give you innings, I give you innings, that's why I'm here. That's why the Cardinals brought him here. That is why the Cardinals are continuing to believe in Miles Michaelis. That's why the Cardinals brought in Kyle Gibson. They want the innings.
But that's why they're banking on the offense, and that's why Alec Burleson and Dylan Carlson need to be in the lineup over Victor Scott, because we need offense, and we need a lot of it.
But what if they're right? This is what I find so interesting about it is I can't think of another team that's gone this path, where they go with the veteran starters that, like, their entire...
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, baseball seems to know.
We don't know yet.
But baseball seems to know a lot more about pitching than the Cardinals do these days, especially the successful teams.
No, you're right. But, like, if everybody, the NFL right now, I'm just going to use this as an example. Everybody in the NFL is going so far in the direction of, like, smaller bodies defensively. Get fast, get athletic, get pass rushers, get guys that can cover. That the NFL is almost going through, like, it's quietly happening. Offenses are starting to go more towards the run. You look at the teams that made it far in the playoffs, like, think about some of the ways that they won in the postseason. The Ravens, the Chiefs even, with Isaiah Pacheco at a physical offensive line. Look at the 49ers. Look at the Detroit Lions. The way that they're winning is by getting a little bigger, getting more physical, bringing back the run game, going with routes across the middle, tight ends games. Like, that's the way that teams are operating offensively now. Go back to Major League Baseball, when everything is going so far in one direction, fewer innings, higher velocity, more strikeouts, get in, get out, let's get to the bullpen. I do find it interesting, even if it's not going to work, to go to a different plan of, okay, you guys can all do that. That's probably a smart way to go. We actually think there is a market inefficiency that's taking place right now where teams are not valuing innings enough during the regular season. I don't think this plan works in the postseason. In the regular season, though, I think there's a chance that it works.
But if you were going to do that, and what worries me about the Cardinals is they're doing more like the Blues did, where they tried to get ahead of the curve, and they went too far that direction, and it costed them. If you were going to go the amount of let's go get innings, why not go get a guy who could provide you quality innings? And like I look at a Jordan Montgomery and say, the past 2 seasons, that dude has given you 100. Fine, but you spent $24 million on these two guys who they can give you quality or they can give you innings, but they might be giving up 6 earned runs a game.
But the Cardinals would say, and again, I'm with you, I think they should have signed Blake Snell instead of these two guys. What the Cardinals would tell you is what you get out of Jordan Montgomery is 1 day of 6 innings. What I get out of Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn is 2 days.
What happens when one of them break then? What happens when one of them can't pitch this season? Or what happens when they go...
But they could have said the same thing about Jordan Montgomery.
That's the problem.
If you have Jordan Montgomery who breaks, and I have 2 guys and one of them breaks, I've still at least got the other guy. It's a less fragile plan.
Okay, and what happens when both of those guys consistently give up 5 earned runs through 4 innings?
Better have a good offense. But what they would probably tell you is they believe that's not going to happen. Because their history suggests that it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to be the same quality as what you would have had with a Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery. But can you get 80% of it for 50% of the cost? Or in the case of Blake Snell, 30% of the cost.
It feels like you're relying so much on your defense to cover for those guys, too. Now, I don't think the defense was very good with the White Sox when Lance Lynn was pitching there and Kyle Gibson with Minnesota. That defense was better, but I think you're relying so much on the defense to cover for the mistakes of those guys, and I'd be very concerned that yours isn't good enough.
Yeah, I think I understand the premise of what they're trying to do because there is actually true benefit to having starters go longer because the bullpen is rested. You can then, like for Steven Matz's outing, now guys, you don't have to push Steven Matz for the quality start. So I understand what they're trying to do. I just question the quality of the innings, and though it is 6 innings, I'm with Alex. Like, do I really believe in Kyle Gibson giving me that same amount of quality starts? I don't. Do I believe in Lance Lynn bouncing back? No, I really don't. Now, if those guys can't give you quality starts, then I think this formula is going to work because I was looking at this. The league average offense averaged 4 runs a game. Now, granted, it is a tough story to say our starter's going to go 6 and have that quality start of 3 runs and then say the bullpen's going to be perfect every single time. So I don't know. I'm just questioning why not continue the trend of Major League Baseball. Why not look for swing and miss, the 5 and dive? That's why you build a deep bullpen like the Cardinals have. And instead they wanted to go with these older veterans and go with, all right, well, they're just going to eat innings. Okay, but if it's not quality innings, and I don't buy what they're saying. Like, I don't know how you could reasonably look at Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn's track record, I understand, but watching him last year, I don't know how you could look at him last year and look at Kyle Gibson in a career who's been, for the most part in his career, a below league average starter. That's what the numbers say. I'm not saying something new that you can look at and go, these guys are going to give us quality starts on a consistent basis. I think they can eat innings on a consistent basis, but if, again, to Alex's point, if it's 6 innings, 4 runs, 5 runs, I don't know how much you're really doing yourself a favor and doing your offense a favor.
So Kyle Gibson last year had 18 quality starts. The year prior to that, Kyle Gibson had 15 quality starts. So, like, this has now become a thing with Gibson where he is giving you those quality starts potential. And the year before that, it was 19.
What were his defensive team's rankings, though? Like, were his defenses tops in the leagues?
No. So, like, he pitched in Philadelphia 2 years ago, and they had a bad defense. The year prior to that, it was half Texas, half Philadelphia, and that was the year when Texas wasn't as good, and their defense wasn't very good. So 2 out of the last 3 seasons, he's actually had below league average defenses.
He's also 3 years younger, 2 years and 3 years younger, though.
Fair, but he's 33, 34, 35. Like, this is typically when you'd expect it to go potentially in the other way, but the way that he operates, like, he's not somebody that I would expect it to drop off precipitously right now. If it was going to go, it would probably go already. Eventually it will, and maybe that's this year, and they end up just being wrong. And I'm highly skeptical of this plan, but I like to see that there's a plan in place. And the Cardinals, for all of the skeptics, and I am among them, I am totally like, if I'm giving my perspective of this, it sounds a lot like what you guys are saying right now. I do want to make sure, though, that we at least present the Cardinals' side of what this could look like, because if it works out, the reason that it works is because of what they're saying right now. Set aside the leadership. That's nonsense. That is not why this will work in the rotation. The reason, if the Cardinals' rotation works better than expected this year, it will be because the Cardinals bet on quality starts, and they were right. I don't think it will. My bet is on them being wrong and this going sideways.
And it's going to go sideways fast, and it's going to be ugly because you're banking on that, and when it goes, you don't have anything to recover from. That's my concern. That's my pessimistic side of this, to where you're banking on this, and the problem, and for when Mo uses the patience term and says it's a long season, when this goes poorly, if it goes poorly, it's to the point that you can't recover from this unless you make a big trade.
And my other fear of this is, it's been the theme of the offseason, was looking for innings, quality start, however you want to call it. They were looking for innings in bulk. That's what they said was the issue last year. My concern is when you see Kyle Gibson go out there. So you said he had, what was it last year in quality starts?
18, 19, and 15 over the last 3 seasons.
I'm curious. I'll have to look at this. The games in which he started and did not have quality starts, like, what did those line scores look like? Was it 6 innings and 6 earned runs? Or was it, hey, he went 5 innings and 3 earned runs, but they pulled him? My guess is he 8 innings? My concern for the Cardinals is they're so focused on getting innings from the starting pitching that they don't go in a game, I don't know, let's say a month from now. They're playing the Braves. Kyle Gibson's getting the start. He goes 4 innings. He's giving up 5 runs. They're not willing to pull the pitcher out because they say, okay, it's better for our bullpen to try and shut down this Braves offense and allow our offense to get back in it. And they just say, let's keep pushing Kyle Gibson. You know what I'm saying? My fear is they're going to want innings so badly that they continue to push these guys too far into games when they should be pulled sooner.
I guess the question would be, and I'd have to go back through individually within these games, like when were the runs scored, right? Were they scored in the 5th inning?
For him, it's probably early because he had a very high ERA innings 1 through 3.
Yeah, we've seen that in spring training.
I just have to go back through and look at that. But for what it's worth, he went fewer than 5 innings 5 times last year in his 33 starts. So he was getting 5+ basically every time he took the mound. And if you want to look at like how often did he go fewer than 6 innings, it was in 14 of his 33 starts last year. So he's giving you 6 innings 20 out of the 33 starts essentially. Yeah. He's almost always getting you through at least 6. And in those innings, in those opportunities in which he went at least 6, here are the earned runs. I'm just going to go through this really quickly. 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4. 1, 1, 3, 1, 6. 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. If he's getting through 6, man, he's typically on his game. Yeah. He only had 2 games last year in which he went at least 6 innings and gave up more than 4, or at least 4 runs. And only once did he go at least 6 innings and give up more than 4 earned runs. Yeah, they lost those games. One of them was 6-0. The other one was 8-4. Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to work. I would bet against it, but when you see these numbers,
I hope it works. Like, I hope it works for the Cardinals' sake, because if it does, you're going to look like geniuses. And with this offense, if you're getting quality starts, you will be a team that people will be like, damn, are they going to be a sneaky favorite pick to do what Arizona just did last year? But again, I'm on the side of if it doesn't work, it's going to look bad for this team, because now you've got 3 guys that if they're not giving you quality starts, what are they offering to your rotation?
I guess what I would have as a retort would be this. Like, I actually don't think that it's going to look bad necessarily. I think that the floor for this is much higher than it's been for the Cardinals in recent seasons, because the floor previously was your starter goes 2 or 3 innings and gives up 6 earned runs, and now your bullpen is on the hook for the next 6 or 7 innings of that game. And now you're screwed not only for that day, but the next one and the one after that. And so there's a trickle-down effect. So that would be my concern. And somebody asked on the text line, by the way, the Cardinals last year, how many quality starts did they have? The Cardinals had 48 quality starts last year. For context, teams that were at the top of the league had about 70. If you're looking at the 3 starters that the Cardinals added going into this past offseason, so you're looking at Gibson, Lynn, and Sonny Gray, you should be expecting about 50 out of them. You add in what Michaelis has given you over the last few seasons. He's between 15 and 20 most seasons. You should expect around 70 quality starts. You should be in the top 5 to 7 this year in quality starts by the end of the year if everybody stays healthy. Big if. and that would mean you get like an extra 20 quality starts from a year ago.
Yeah.
It's significant, man. It is. It's a really significant change from where they were a year ago to where they're at right now. If you're looking by percentage, the Cardinals in just 30% of their starts from a year ago got a quality start. The other teams that were at the bottom with them, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Reds, the Tigers, the Rockies, the Royals, the A's. A bunch of teams that had no chance at all to be able to compete.
And the Reds will be a good litmus test because the Reds did not add innings this year. I mean, look at what they did. They added Nick Martinez, a swingman, and Frankie Montas hasn't thrown but like 2 innings in the last 2 years. And there are guys that they're relying on, Hunter Green and Graham Ashcraft, haven't stayed healthy. Yeah. So it's going to be like a one-for-one comparison.
It's a bold strategy. I don't know if it's going to work out. I would bet against it, but when you see these numbers from Derek Gould in his piece earlier today, it did make me think, like, what if the Cardinals are seeing something that, while it goes against everything I believe in as a modern pitching believer, like true believer, it might be something that is interesting. It might be like a team that is building around a running game in the NFL right now, like the Ravens or the 49ers, and you say to yourself, damn, all right, maybe this will work.
How'd that work for them? One good year, though, right?
Coming up next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN. YouTube are a little different. It sounds like both are good now, but for what it's worth, the stream has been good each of the last 2 days. It's been the YouTube that's been difficult.
Visually, it should be better today.
Rather than stay here afterwards, I might go home and take a 30-minute nap.
Visually,
visually, it should be better today than what we had yesterday. That was a bitch.
That was tough.
Yeah, were we stuck in that corner? And that was the only place we could go. I was so ticked.
That would be more of what I'd expect.
What, ditching or napping?
Both. I don't think we've talked about this, by the way, so like if I bring this up and we've already talked about it, be ready to pivot.
Huh?
I don't know if we've talked about this before or not, but
We pivot to a break because pivot. T-Bone doesn't know that reference.
yeah, that's French.
I feel like he's seen that.
I enjoy Friends. I still watch that late at night sometimes.
Smallman's worst take ever was Friends is terrible.
That's a bad take.
America loves Friends.
I'm a Ross.
You absolutely are. BK's a Monica.
All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. T-Bone, what do you got for us today?
Guys, they're working on a sequel to another movie that probably doesn't need a sequel.
I saw this.
And I don't know if we've brought this up before or not. Happy Gilmore 2 is in the works.
This is so stupid.
Adam Sandler confirmed that the script has been written.
What?
And now it's going to be about time before they get back
so
to Happy
stupid.
Gilmore 2.
This is a terrible idea. There are certain movies you don't make sequels to, and this is one of them. The movie ended perfectly. Like we saw Chubbs in heaven with the gator that got his hand.
I just don't know where
that
to
damn
go.
crocodile. That's what it was. You don't. They're probably going to be like on the senior tour or something.
Sure.
And it's going to be Shooter McGavin and Happy Gilmore shows up and it's like, I'll take you down this time, Shooter. It's a terrible idea. Don't ruin Happy Gilmore for everybody. I said the same thing about Ghostbusters. I don't.
Yeah.
They ruined Ghostbusters.
I thought the new one was fine.
I didn't watch it.
It was a remake, though. Like, it.
You know the movie that they didn't ruin when they remade it was Jumanji.
Yeah.
I actually thought they did a good job with that one, and then the sequel was worth it.
That's fair.
But they're doing this with Naked Gun also, and Liam Neeson is playing Leslie Nielsen's role, and it's a terrible idea.
I think action movies you can recreate.
That was a comedy.
Well, I know, but I'm saying action movies, generally speaking, you can recreate them.
Comedy.
Or add on to the story. You can just, like, build onto it, whatever it was.
Taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Fast and the Furious 27.
Yeah.
You can do those in a way that I don't know if it works for comedy.
It doesn't.
Because comedy changes so much. Like, T-Bone, we've told you to go back and watch the comedies that we saw when we were kids. And, like, for me and Alex, we watched it through a kid's eyes at the time, and it was all hilarious, right? But think about some of your favorite comedians. Think about some of your favorite bits. Think about some of your favorite comedy movies from the early 2000s. And now think about how that would play today.
Yeah.
Man, it's just changed. Like, the world has changed. The references have changed. So much has changed. I don't know that you need to recreate Happy Gilmore. If you want to do a golf comedy, you could probably do something like that, but it doesn't need to be a recreation of Happy Gilmore.
And let's be honest, like you're seeing these guys in older form, and it takes away the essence of the film. It takes away the essence of what was Happy Gilmore. Like they did this with Dumb and Dumber. And I thought it was a terrible idea because I don't want to see Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels in this space. I want to think of them as the Dumb and Dumber.
But the funny thing is, like, you can recreate Mission Impossible, and I'll go see it, and I'll be like, yeah, this is entertaining. You can recreate Top Gun
because
Top
those
Gun
scripts
Maverick.
are easier.
You can recreate, and you're like, this is really good because they're action movies, and they've got a little bit of like the romance side of things as well because you got to have that. But like, they're action movies at their heart, and the people that we remember from 20 years ago, yeah, they're different actors than they were then, but you can still kind of get away with it. Comedy's different, man. Comedy's a young man's game for the most part.
Yeah, and like if you do it to where it is like he's let's say Adam Sandler, for example, is playing on the senior tour or whatnot, you almost got to play into him being the old guy that doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah,
you know?
he's going to have to be Chubbs.
He can't be the same guy he was in the first movie because it's just different. And you're right, a lot of comedies Like, you guys told me to watch Wedding Crashers. BK acted like it was the best movie that's ever been invented.
It is like one of the
best
best
I watched
comedies.
Wedding Crashers. Like, okay, I like that, but it wasn't great. Like, I don't know if it didn't translate or it's just not me.
See, like, that's the one you can't make a sequel to. Step Brothers, you can't make a sequel
Dodgeball.
to. Dodgeball, you can't make a sequel to.
Didn't they make a sequel to Dodgeball?
No, they were talking about doing it, and I'm glad that they haven't yet, because it's like there's just a certain elegance to a comedy that it's like, man, what a script, how creative, that was great. And they always end perfectly. And then now you're just like, oh, well, we got to jumpstart this so we can get more money out of it.
Somebody on the text line from the 636 actually makes a really good point. They said, guys, comedy has to be seen and understood in the context in which it is written. Blowing stuff up in action film is timeless.
Yeah.
People always understand that there is no context that is necessary. It's always going to be something that is visually appealing to
you know the comedy that had success with this, but they ended the first one to where it was still open, was The Hangover. But I thought The Hangover screwed it when they got to the third one.
Yeah, correct.
The third one sucked.
And that was right after. Like, there was a brief period of time, but it wasn't 20 years.
And they ended the first one where it was like, oh, okay, I see exactly what's going to happen. This guy's going to get married, and now you go back and you have the same thing happen to him.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In 15 minutes, we'll get to a game of one's got to go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go. A quick update on the games that are being played right now. Baylor still up 59-43 against Colgate. They are no longer covering, though, I don't believe. Florida Atlantic trying to mount a bit of a comeback against Northwestern. That game is 56-52. There's about 3.5 minutes left in that one, so we'll give you updates right here on BK and Ferrario as we go along. Coming up next, though, we're continuing our countdown of the 20 most important Cardinals heading into the upcoming season with number 6 on our list. We are nearly to the top 5. Number 6 coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Damn alligator bit my...
Bradford, the Contreras Open for this should be in the Daily Show board.
Seltzer? I want to go home and sleep. Seltzer it is. Which seltzer should I go? Bud Light seltzer? I need food. I'm not getting you that. I'll get you a beer. I need food.
This is why I should have left it with Hope tonight. I'm just going to go and hope the guys show up. Guys, why aren't you here?
20 most important Cardinals for the 2024 season. Number 6, Willson, Contreras.
Right center, Sawinski going. Fly ball center. That ball is well hit. That ball is not coming back. A mammoth home run.
Runner at first goes. Pitch swing and a miss. Contreras' throw is on the money. We're going to see that a lot.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. At number 6 on our countdown of the 20 most important Cardinals for the 2024 season, it is Willson Contreras. Alex had him at number 6 on his list. T-Bone had him all the way up at number 5. I was the low man on Willson Contreras. In terms of his importance, I had him at number 9 on my list of the 20 most important Cardinals. The reason why I had him so low, guys, is because I do think if Contreras takes a bit of a step back offensively this year, isn't bad, but just is solid, not great. I think you could just put Jordan Walker in that number 5 slot, and you probably are able to maintain pretty much what you were expecting offensively this year. You just have so many, we've talked about this with each of them, you have so many of those right-handed hitters that hit for a little bit of power, a decent amount of average, and can hit somewhere between 3 and 7 in your order, that I don't think any one individual piece of that, barring the guys that are great defensively, I don't think any one piece is overly important for this team to reach its ceiling. So that's why I was a little lower. I still had him at number 9. He was in my top 10. I had him right behind Brendan Donovan. But that's why I was a little lower. Alex, why were you so high on Willson Contreras, your favorite Cardinal?
I'm just going to call you Jack Flaherty from now on, trying to drag him under. I think I had him so high is because he's your third big bat. We talk so much about having that three-headed monster for the Cardinals in terms of their batting order and that MV3. If you don't have Willson Contreras, I know Jordan Walker poses to be that guy, but I still haven't seen it yet. I mean, he had a great first year. We know about the sophomore slump. Does that show up at the times this season? I can't rely on him to be that third big bat. And if you don't have Willson Contreras, then I think you're going back to talking about this offense when it just was Goldie and Arenado. And to me, that isn't good enough to get it done, especially after what we just talked about with the pitching side for the Cardinals. I also think he's going to be better defensively and handle the pitching staff better than what it was last year, because I think of all of the I talk a lot about those first year's blunders when you have all the pressure. We saw it with Arenado. We saw it with Goldschmidt. I think that's past him now. And now that you got rid of the pitchers that had problems with Willson Contreras, I think you're going to have a new outlook on life for Willson Contreras. I think he's going to be massively important to this team, both offensively and defensively.
I will give you one area, and T-Bone, I want to get your thoughts on this, that the Cardinals do need Willson Contreras to do exactly what he did a year ago, and that's with runners in scoring position. They had very few guys that came through in a significant way with runners in scoring position. One guy who did was Willson Contreras. When he had runners in scoring position, he hit .315 last year with a slugging percentage of .560. He also walked 16% of the time. So he was hitting for average. He was getting on base 43% of the time. And when he got something in the strike zone, he was hitting for power as well. That is a pure number 5 hole hitter. And that's what he was for you last year. So if you're looking for the importance, that's where it is.
Yeah, and the reason I had him all the way up at number 5 for me, I don't think the Cardinals will pull him out of the 5 spot. Why should I believe Oliver Marmol is going to pull him out of that spot when last year, the first 2 months, he hit .214 and had a .654 OPS? Yep. I think they view him as a lock at number 5, and they will not move him. So it's why I put him so high on my list, and I think he does have to be better defensively. Look, he doesn't have to win a Gold Glove. He's got a can of an arm, and he can help in the running game. They need him to be better with framing, and they need that preparation. I said this last year when the story came out of him being removed from catcher. I thought it was pretty telling that they did it. I do think some of it was on his preparation. I do not think Contreras was blameless in last year's blunder that was the catching situation. So he's got to be a little bit better defensively, and when I mean that, it's mostly the framing. He's worked on it. They say he's going to that. I think it's more that one knee approach. Yep. If he's better framing and he really helps steal some strikes in the bottom of the zone, man, that's going to help this pitching staff out that I have a lot of questions about. So that's why I had him at number 5 on my list.
The good news is Yachty's here to help him.
Yeah, he's been at camp the entire spring.
Yeah.
The one thing that I love about, one of the many things that I love about Willson Contreras, now inside of a season, season, he is one of those guys that goes through the roller coaster where he'll have a month where he's hitting 214, like you said, and then the next month he'll hit 375, and it's like there's nobody on the planet that is hotter right now than Willson Contreras.
Guys.
It's a lot of players. Yeah, very few are the consistency, steady Eddie throughout the course of the season. Willson Contreras, though, if you look at the back of the baseball card, man, it's the same thing every year. He's going to get you 20 home runs. He's going to hit around 250. He's going to be right around 20% above league average offensively. That's what he has been each of the last 4 full regular seasons, essentially. So you know what you're getting out of him. It reminds me, I think he's a better version of this, but with Brandon Saad, inside of a season, you don't know what you're getting in any 10-game stretch, but you look at it at the end of the year, you're going to get a 20-goal scorer, he's going to give you that offense, and you move on at the end of the year, and you feel pretty good about the $4.5 million that you spent on him. That's what Willson Contreras is offensively for the Cardinals. You know what he's going to be by the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I agree, and I think he's also going to provide some energy to this team that is desperately needed. I know it was always talking about the young guys taking over the clubhouse last season. I think Willson Contreras' fire is closely resembled to how Yadier Molina acted behind the plate, and I think that's going to be a good thing for this team, especially the attitude now, not having guys dragging him down like they did last year.
I think it's really going to fit well with Lance Lynn and Sonny Gray.
Oh,
those two new additions, I think, are going to love throwing to
Kyle
Willson
Gibson
Contreras.
will like it?
I think he'll be fine with it. I wouldn't actually be surprised if it's Ivan Herrera who's catching him regularly, because you're going to have to probably find a spot in your rotation that you're going to go with him, or just maybe it's the third game, right? Day game after night game. You could go about it that way as well. But I'm pretty confident, given the mindsets, that Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, those guys are going to fit in real well with what you have right now out of Willson Contreras. So at number 6 on our list of the 20 most important Cardinals for the 2024 season, it is Willson Contreras.
Yes!
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're getting to Mark Parrish, NHL Network analyst. We're going to get his thoughts on where the Blues stand right now. I will give you an update as we stand right now with the NCAA tournament. FAU now leading 58-56 with just under a minute to go in that game against Northwestern. Colgate is down by 20, it's 69-49. Not so nice for Colgate with about 8 minutes to go in that game. San Diego State with an early 11-point lead, 27-16 against UAB. Sorry, Alex. There's about 8 minutes to go in the first half in that one.
It's early.
And we're off to a hot start between Western Kentucky and Marquette. Marquette up 11-10 against the 15-seeded Western Kentucky.
Would you guys say that 10 out of 10 dentists don't approve of the Baylor-Colgate score?
That was a terrible, terrible joke.
Did you feel like you needed to pigeonhole that in?
I thought it was great. Doty thought it was funny. Hell on, I can hear Bradford laughing back in the studio, too.
No, you cannot.
Yeah, I can.
That was bad.
Look, that guy's laughing over there, too. That was great.
I don't even know. Are our speakers going out here? There's no chance you heard that.
No,
they are. YouTube. See? LOL. Ha, ha, ha.
You're not even looking at YouTube. I see your laptop.
No, it's on my phone. I have it right now.
That was terrible.
I thought
Let's
it was
go to
great.
break.
10 out of 10 dentists do approve.
One's got to go. Coming up next, Alex got to go here in just a minute.
Cards canceled tonight. Weather.
What was that? Cardinals canceled, is that what you said?
Yeah, cards canceled tonight for weather.
Huh? Cardinals game's canceled.
Cardinals, no.
I wasn't on television either. Yesterday's game.
Ordering for sandwiches, salads, box lunches, and cookies. Delivery to your home or office. Just visit joyasdeli.com.
Cheers.
Or if you want to cook at home.
Hey guys, Dang Dang has received interest in the transfer portal.
Who?
Dang Dang.
Supported by Kuna Food Service.
Division 2. I think there's a chance the kid that plays at McHenry's going D1 this year.
I haven't seen any Mizzou connections. What the hell are they doing?
They already got a kid.
Rebuild.
Okay. They're going to get Javon Porter.
They're waiting for a draft pick.
Both Porters didn't work out very well last time. I guess Patrick's not hitting the over.
You don't think so?
What was it? 140?
Yeah. They're at 114.
I can't believe you took that. They could score 34 points.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's gotta go here on BK and Ferrario. One's Gotta Go, home edition. Your living room, bathroom, kitchen, or the bedroom.
I'll get rid of the living room because I spend more time in my basement than the living room anyway.
Fair.
Kitchen and bathroom are the 2 places I spend the most time in. Am I right, T-Bone? Up top.
I'm not going to high-five that.
Okay. My God, man.
Your bathroom?
Yeah, man. Irritable bowel syndrome. I told you.
I don't want to be there.
No, you don't want to be there.
Bedroom, living room, bathroom. What was the fourth one?
Kitchen.
Kitchen?
Your kitchen is your bathroom, though. Yeah. So
my kitchen's kind of my living room too. So I'll get rid of. I'll get rid of the bedroom. I can sleep on my couch in the living room, and there's not like a television in my room. So
anytime Tebow goes to Alton with us, he has no bedroom. He sleeps on a couch.
Yeah, that's also true. BK was talking all day yesterday about how much he misses the road trip to Alton. Man, the more I'm thinking about it, the less I do. Because you're right, I slept on a couch, woke up with my back hurting the next morning.
BK was Sarah McLachlan in those pet commercials on the late night TV shows.
Wolverine laying in the bed, mean too.
He was crying at his house while Kara's screaming with, BK, help with Luca. And he's like, hold on, I'm looking at pictures of all.
It was more of the Wolverine meme with me looking at the picture frame of the 3 of us.
He texted us last night at like 10 o'clock, and he's like, man, right now we'd be drinking beer, watching the game. And I'm thinking, man, right now I'm about to go to bed.
And I was thinking, I'm already drinking beer, watching the game.
It speaks pretty.
And I have my own bed.
It speaks to our relationship that is how all of us operated last night. I was just thinking about how much fun it would have been for us to be together, hanging out at an Airbnb, drinking a bunch of beer, being in the state of Illinois, gambling on the games,
that's all he wants.
Sweating out our bets, watching that great finish.
In our bets. All of our bets lost by the time we were done with our show.
Well, we would have been able to place more if we were still in the state of Illinois. That would have been nice. So, yeah, it would have been a really good time. But instead, we are here today. And we're happy to be here. You guys can come on out and join us. We'll be here until 2 o'clock.
Swirl in the crease to save that one.
We're broadcasting live at Helen Fitzgerald's. Come on out, enjoy some ice-cold Bud Light. We got ourselves some right here. 101 ESPN giveaways, plenty of screens to watch all the games, and so much more. BK and Ferrario until 2, the Fast Lane until 6 o'clock. We got a nail-biter, by the way, 58-56 with about 15 seconds to go between Florida Atlantic and Northwestern. I was asking for a buzzer beater. We'll see if we're able to get one as Northwestern ties this one up. FAU has a real shot here to be able to put this thing away.
That's the shot you take?
And we're going to overtime.
Boom.
We needed one of those too. We needed an overtime.
Hey, Patrick's going to get his over.
No, he's not. They need to score 30 points to hit the over.
Patrick, I believe.
Patrick, you need like 2 more overtimes, buddy.
I believe.
All right.
That was a terrible shot selection, by the way. That kid should not have taken that
he
shot.
settled for a
That's the
step
shot
back
selection
three.
that should have gone.
With 2 dudes in his face.
I didn't see. I couldn't tell. Did they have a timeout left? Because if they did, you got to call a timeout in that
They
spot.
must not have.
All right, one's got to go Blue Blood edition in college basketball. Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, or Kansas?
Kansas. I hate Kansas.
Really?
Yeah.
I kind of hate.
I don't like
Kentucky's
cheaters.
the one that has had the least amount of recent success.
Yeah, but I like Calipari sticking with the 64
Yeah,
team
me
to
too.
the tournament.
Rawr. That didn't work out well yesterday. I would go with. I don't really hate any of these actually, but I'd probably get rid of Duke mostly because I know a couple friends that are Duke fans and they're annoying. So I'd get rid of Duke.
Well, they're not friends then.
You know what? I respect that. That's a totally fair one.
I got rid of Kansas because Kansas City. I know a couple Kansas City fans. And
they are the worst.
One's got to go players that you'd give up Bennington in order to acquire. Cale Makar, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, or one of the Kachucks.
We've already passed on the Kachuk, so I'll go with the Kachuk.
I love Bennington, but I give him up for all of those guys.
If you're going to have to get rid of one of those players, I would probably get rid of Cale Makar, believe it or not. I will go ahead and take my shot
defense,
with
right?
McDavid, Matthews, and one of the Kachucks.
I think I'd get rid of Matthews.
Really? Well, that's
I think
silly.
I could get the goal scoring still from Matthew Kachuk and McDavid and the points, and I got a stud defenseman.
Yeah, I'll take Austin Matthews. You
I'd
can
get
go
rid
ahead.
of Kachuk. We didn't want him last time.
Yeah, well, why would we want him this
All
time?
right, let's get out of here on this one. Possible Cardinals deadline pickup.
None of them.
Bieber, Robbie Ray, Zach Eflin. One's got to go.
Oh, Eflin, because he's the one that the Cardinals would totally do. So
Eflin would be
that's the one that's
cheapest,
got to get out of
and
here.
he would be the one they'd be like, oh, yeah, he's our number one.
When you started to read through those first two, I was like, there's no chance they'd pick up any of those guys. And you said Eflin, I was like, oh, yeah, that's
They'd
a Cardinal.
acquire him, and he would start game one of a playoff series.
I really wish the Cardinals had traded for Robbie Ray. That's the one that wish they would have done.
I really wish they would have signed Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell.
They still can. Coming up next, Mark Parrish, NHL Network analyst here on BK and Ferrario.
Bulldogs, too many Wildcats, you know? Like Northwestern should be the Cats of the Wild.
Yeah, this is done.
Yeah, it's over.
Good night, FAU.
It's a good run. But you ished the bed in the second half.
Back in my hometown teams in our conference, you had the Teodopolis wooden shoes.
The Teodopolis wooden shoes?
Teodopolis.
The wooden shoes.
T-Town wooden shoes and the Effingham Flaming Hearts.
He's got 140 on the over-under, right?
Hearts?
Ooh. So he needs 14 points?
Yeah.
Okay. Meanwhile, mine's looking great right now. We're barely halfway, or just over halfway through, and we've got 42 points in the first half for Marquette versus Western Kentucky.
Solid.
Feeling pretty good about that. I just need it to stay relatively close, because if it does, we'll get more points. We'll push them in the second half.
Is he not called yet?
Okay, cool. Alex is 0 for 2.
Here, I'm going to text you his number, Bradford. You call him.
Mark Parrish of NHL Network will join us momentarily here on BK and Ferrario. Want to get his thoughts on the Blues versus the Wild matchup coming up tomorrow afternoon. By the way, you'll hear that game right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Alex will have pregame coverage starting tomorrow at noon. A big one between the Blues and the Wild that could ultimately determine a decent amount in terms of the standings in the Western Conference for that final wild card spot. Mark Parrish follows the Wild closely. He's going to join us coming up here in just a little bit. But Alex, a quick update on where we stand right now with the NCAA tournament. Northwestern versus FAU is in overtime, and this one feels like it's over. Northwestern up by 8. They've got off to a 9-1 run to start out the OT period. Just over 2 minutes to go in that one. I think this is going to be the end of FAU right here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, once you give a team that type of life like they did with Northwestern, you get into overtime, and now they start knocking down all of their shots. So it makes sense that they knocked those down, and I think it's pretty much over for
Baylor
FAU.
is up 86-66 with 2 minutes to go against Colgate.
Great
so
odds on Colgate right
Baylor going to be able to put them away, doing quick work with them. UAB is losing 33-26 against San Diego State, and Marquette with an early 26-19 lead against Western Kentucky. That is where things stand right now across the NCAA tournament.
It's an 11-point lead, and people are still cheering.
Just dominating. They're trying to get the over at this point. That's all that we're playing for in that game.
I root
we're at
for the
129.
under.
The over, I believe, was 140 in that. So people are just rooting for points.
Look at
Northwestern
Patrick's face.
very likely to move on in the NCAA tournament. All right, Mark Parrish is on the line. You can watch him on NHL Network, on NHL Now, coming up today at 3 o'clock. Plus, he appears on NHL Now and NHL Tonight throughout the rest of the NHL regular season. I saw him tweeting about the Blues, one of the goals that was scored last night in their game against the Senators. He joins us now on BK and Ferrario. Mark, you're with BK and Alex Ferrario today. We appreciate the time as always, my friend. What did you see from the Blues last night in their win against the Ottawa Senators?
Well, I saw him really take care of business, and thank you guys for having me back on. You know, it's been so long. I was starting to think I said something to offend you guys, for crying out loud. It's been so long.
No, we love Mark Parrish.
So thank you.
We love Mark Parrish. We just got to find a way to get you on. You're busy. You're a busy man these days on NHL Network.
Yeah, you know, luckily enough, this is a busy time of year. But no, you know, and I like what I see about the Blues right now. I mean, obviously, Ottawa's Ottawa, but you got to beat the teams that are below you right now, and obviously they got a bigger one tomorrow against the Minnesota Wild, which I'll be actually covering for Bally Sports North. I'm looking forward to that game because you know, that one you got to keep pace with the Vegas Golden Knights right now at the points right now, and Vegas is, you know, not exactly the same team they were. So if I'm St. Louis, I'm awfully excited about the way we're playing and coming down the stretch and want to just keep eating up wins.
Mark, when you look at those three teams, because now that LA's kind of distanced themselves from Vegas and Nashville, of course, has distanced themselves from both Minnesota and Nashville, how would you rank those three teams, Vegas, Minnesota, and St. Louis, all competing for that final wild card spot?
Oh, I mean, I would gotta give it to Vegas because as number one, because they have the spot, they've got a game in hand, and yeah, I know they got to win that game in hand. But when you're talking about a veteran team and then a team, you're talking about a team that won the Stanley Cup last year. They know how to take advantage of those kind of situations. So you expect that they're going to keep winning and continue to get better. So if you're St. Louis, you've got to keep playing, winning these games. These 4-point games, you've just got to try and keep pace best you can and hope that Vegas kind of keeps floundering a little bit because they really haven't been able to catch fire. The trades, I tell you what, for a guy that got traded plenty, let me tell you, like there's some times acclimation, it can take time. And you got some of these guys, Hannafin, that's been playing in Calgary, and these guys, all of a sudden they're playing in front of the Vegas audience and the Vegas crowd, and the drive is different. Everything is so different for when you make these trades that it takes time to acclimate, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And when now with St. Louis, if that doesn't happen, they're in a prime position right now that if Vegas just goes on, and it doesn't have to be a 7-game skid, it's just got to be a 2-3-game skid.
When we look at what the Blues have right now that is kind of in their favor, Mark, we look at the goaltending, right? The combination of Joel Hofer plus Jordan Binnington has been really good for the vast majority of the season. You look around some of the other teams that we expected to contend this year, and that's been one of their biggest issues. Do you think that goaltending is enough to put the Blues potentially over the top down the stretch?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, whether it will happen or not, but yeah, you like Binnington and Hofer, those two have been playing just spectacular. Binnington has found his game again. Hofer just seems to be having a boatload of fun, pushing Binnington for a number one spot, which is exactly what you kind of want to do. You want to have a quality 1-2 punch. Look at, case in point, or Boston, or even more recently in Nashville. Look what they have going on there. It is huge. The combination for goaltending has become such a bigger piece in an NHL team throughout the year and then into the playoffs than I ever thought it would be. As opposed to you just needed Marty Brodeur, you needed Patrick Waugh. They're gonna play all 7 and they're gonna win the majority of them. Now you want that 1-2 combo to where you don't have a backup that you're not just throwing in there to hopefully get a chance to win, that you still expect to win with. That the team plays the exact same front of this, and the team plays the exact same has the same confidence to play their game in front of. And that's where you're seeing these young guys. And it's been fun watching the Blues. I mean, watching Robert Thomas, turning this young man, turning into a young superstar, and the way he's growing up as a leader. Neighbors, and even look at the last 5 games, which I love. When you're looking at that for the Blues throughout the lineup, the depth in scoring, how everybody's kicking in. Kyrou, Neighbors, Thomas, Shen. You got Nathan Walker jumping in there. Buchnevich has got 4 assists in his last 5. So like the whole team is bought in. The whole team is playing better hockey. They're playing inspired hockey, and that's fun to see. Will it be enough to catch Vegas? Well, I mean, it does. As just like it does come down to this. As much as the systems, and yet you got to believe and you got to commit to that system. It comes down to the point where who wants it more, and this is the time of year where it comes down to who wants it more.
We're talking with former NHLer Mark Parrish, also on NHL Network. And Mark, you spent a majority of your career on teams that made the playoffs. And we've been having this conversation this season of, the impact of making the playoffs for this Blues roster versus if it didn't go this direction and they were selecting in a top 10, top 12 spot for the NHL draft. From your perspective and your experience, how impactful is a playoff push like this for a group that does have a lot of younger players?
Oh, it's huge. The confidence it could give them to just – because it's hard. I think that's the one thing. A lot of fans are disappointed when their teams don't make it. It's really, really hard to make the NHL playoffs. There's a lot of parity throughout the league this year. I mean, you can even just talk about how much we experts talk about our favorites, and instead of having the 1 or 2 or 3 favorites in the past, we talk about 6, 7, 8 teams that possibly could easily win the Stanley Cup. So the parity is out there, and it's really, really hard. And when you've got this, there was a transition in St. Louis, clearly a transition where this became Jordan Kyrou, this became Robert Thomas's team, where they were looked at the leaders. That's a lot of weight for a young guy to put on, and they've handled it wonderfully. But you take that step, and this game is a process, and you focus on the progress, And one of that steps in the progress, and it's a big one, is having the confidence that you are a playoff contender. You got to be a playoff contender before you're a cup contender. So if this leadership, this group, can somehow find a way to dig their way out, get themselves in the playoffs, especially beat out a team like Vegas, the reigning cup champion, that is a huge boost to this team's confidence. Whether they win if they win the first round, then it's great. Hey, that's even more confidence. That's just icing on the cake. But the confidence that it gives that group that they are a true playoff team, because then you truly believe like you've got it in there. We're only 1 or 2, 3 pieces away, as opposed to, and are we going to get blown up at the deadline or not? I mean, I've been in both situations, and it's a tough situation to be in. It's a lot more fun being the team chasing and being on its way up, which is the way the St. Louis Blues are definitely heading.
Mark, we've fallen in love here in St. Louis this season with Jake Neighbors and what he's been able to do in front of the net. I have to imagine he's a man after your heart with the way that you played. Of his 24 goals so far this season, 18 of them are in that high danger area right in front of the net. You don't see that very often with a kid that's just 21 years old. What does that mean to you as somebody that is a throwback type of player, one of those guys that's going to go to the front of the net? What does it mean for you to be able to see a 21-year-old kid that's actually willing to go to the dirty areas?
I absolutely adore it, and I'm so glad you brought it up. I love Jake Neighbors. The goal he scored last night, I mean, this guy's just a pit bull, a bulldog in front of the net there. He just won't be denied. And I love it because it tells me the game really hasn't changed. It still gets down to it when it comes down to, especially we're going to love this kid in the playoffs, his style of hockey. Oh, my Lord, I can't wait for St. Louis to make the playoffs and see how he elevates his game, because that's when that game really gets magnified, I should say. It's simple. Everything gets simplified. You've seen it this time of year. All the better teams now, all the fancy cross-seam stuff isn't really there as much. It's north-south. Get the puck on net. Get to those hard areas. And a lot of teams, a lot of players aren't willing to do that. And like you said, I love it. This young kid, he just comes in as a bull in a china shop. He's like, I ain't got no problem with it, boys. Watch me. And I love that he's getting the success. He's getting rewarded for it. And I just want to see it more.
You know, Mark, he's provided so much offense for this team, whether it's been on the power play or at even strength. But, when you look at the underlying numbers for the Blues, everybody always cites how the team doesn't perform well at even strength. But a team that's pushing for the playoff spot may not be performing well at even strength with a healthy mix of veteran players and younger players. How do you read a team like that?
Well, it's obviously it's a little bit concerning because, that kind of goes down to the consistency, where the 5-on-5 play, you see more of how is their consistent play, how is their 200-foot consistent play going, but at the same time, this time of year, special teams can make up for a lot, it really can, if you can keep a team of 1 or 2 and you shut them down on the special teams, you give up a couple on 5-on-5, you shut down their special teams, you're able to score a couple on their power play. It's amazing how it can swing, and you can see teams that have won playoff series because their flat-out power play was just flat out better than the others.
Mark, final question that I've got for you, and we thank you so much for the time. The opposite in terms of the way that they play stylistically of Jake Neighbors is Jordan Kyrou. He had a really good game last night, but he has come under some scrutiny here in St. Louis this year for his performance from start to finish. I am curious, you do have more of that 10,000-foot view on Kyrou than we do locally, where we're in it every single day, and we hear from the fans, both the good and the bad, every single day. How do you view Jordan Kyrou at this point in his career?
I think he's progressing very, very well. He's a special hockey player. He's got amazing kind of skill. He's got amazing talent. He's got confidence in his game. And you know what? It just takes time to learn the full 200-foot game, to be, I've been there. And with Neighbors, the consistency. These guys are young guys. I know Kyrou's been around a little bit longer, but they're still very young hockey players. And the hardest part of becoming a professional is learning to bring that consistency, whether it's the effort, whether it's being a D-zone liability, whether it's your offensive output or whatever, effort or whatever it may be, bringing that every single night, 82 games a year, and then hopefully another, at least 16 wins in the playoffs is really, really hard. And, that's where, you really learn to be an NHLer when you figure that out. You see a lot of rookies and young guys even they hit to that 50-ish kind of 60 maybe game mark, and they're kind of like, wait, we got 30 more games, we got 20 more games. It's tough, and you kind of tend to see the development of a pro as those get less and less as they get older and as they mature. And I have no doubt with especially Jake Neighbors' passion, but Jordan Kyrou, I have no doubt that they will become the 200-foot players that the whole Blues organization and fans are looking forward to seeing, because they've got it and they're the right kind of character.
Mark, I always love talking playoff push with you, my man. We promise we won't be strangers again for very long when we catch up with you. Hopefully we'll be talking Jake Neighbors in the playoffs with you real soon, man. But enjoy the game tomorrow between the Blues and Wild, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
I love it. I always appreciate coming on with you guys. You guys are the best. Thank you.
Love it, Mark. You are too, man. Thank you so much. There you go, Mark Parrish with NHL Network.
So I've got a question for you, Alex.
Okay.
Every national analyst that we have on.
I know.
I mean, every single one, without fail. I don't think we've had a single one that goes in the other direction on this. When we ask them about Jordan Kyrou, they all say the same thing. It essentially comes down to this. Young star. Young star in the NHL, that's who Jordan Kyrou is. So, what's the disconnect?
You know what the disconnect is? Take what he has said, what Jeff Merrick has said, what David Pagnotta has said, and then listen to what David Backes said. I don't think it has anything to do with talent. If we're talking talent, Jordan Kyrou, if you redraft that season, is probably a guy that's going to get selected in the top 10 because of his talent. But we're not talking about only talent. We're talking about the personality side of it. And these guys don't get to see the personality side of it as much because they're seeing the game highlights. And that's no disrespect to any of these guys. I really cherish what Mark Parrish and Jeff Merrick have to say. But they're not seeing the long-term effect. And not saying that David Backes is either, because Backes told us up front, like, hey, I'm not as in tune with the team as you guys are.
Sure.
But the reference that he used was Vladimir Tarasenko. And, guys, the longest time about Tarasenko that we heard was, he's an incredible player, but we got to get him focused in the game. Ken Hitchcock used to talk all the time about how he would quit on a shift midway through.
Correct.
In the middle of a shift, he would go right back to the bench if it wasn't working out in his direction. I think what Mark Parrish has said, what Jeff Merrick has said is absolutely correct. The hard part for this Blues team, and this is why I think the head coach is such an important hire for Doug Armstrong right now, is you got to find a way to get what David Backes is saying you have to avoid and what Mark Parrish and Jeff Merrick see and combine them together to get an NHL player. Because when you get that guy, you have a first-line superstar. But
I guess here's my question. What if he's just a second-line forward?
I don't think his talent isn't, though.
But what if he is? Like, what if that's what he is long-term? Because they're like, are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl second-line players? No, but sometimes they do play on different lines, which means that by virtue of that, one of them is a second-line player for their respective team.
But see, the difference between,
And I'm not saying, like, Kyrou's not Leon Draisaitl.
No.
He's not Connor McDavid.
That's what I heard.
But for me, is like the way I look at it as, if a guy's got first-line talent, what makes him a second-line player is the attitude. And if an attitude is a problem, I can't have that guy playing on my second line.
What about William Nylander? William Nylander's a second-line player.
I would argue the head coach unlocked that.
But he's a second-line player.
Because they have Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews on that team.
Well, yes, but they also have multiple different lines. Marner's one of them. Max Domi's on that top line. Like, it's by combinations, right? Like, when the Blues were at their best, they had 3 lines that you could roll out there. They had 4, but 3 lines that you could roll out there and feel like you could get offense from any of them. This is always my thing with Jordan Kyrou. I understand the money, but if it comes down to it, and, like, for example, Jimmy Snuggerud ends up taking that top-line right-winger spot next year, it's not a bad thing. You can have, like, if you average it out, the money for those on average is about $4 million that you're spending on the top 2 lines.
And you can win with
on right wing.
I go back to the David Backes comment. And again, I don't know this because I'm not a part of the team. The only people that know this are the front office, the coaches, and the players. But what David Backes said, for players, unless you get it to click like Vladimir Tarasenko had to have it punched into him from David Backes, you never get that player. Alex Ovechkin was never going to be a player who could play in the playoffs until Barry Trotz got it out of him. I think
or until he got the right situation around it. Like, I think it can go either way. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, but I mean, the players were the same players. They got the coach in that got the best out of them. Like, I think Kyrou toes the line of somebody who could be a William Nylander, a Jake Gensel, but he also toes the line of being a Johnny Gaudreau. And for the Blues, if you can't find the Jake Gensel or William Nylander, and he is a Johnny Gaudreau, then that player's not going to get the best out of your team.
All of this is why I think the number one need for the St. Louis Blues, and maybe it's Dvorsky, maybe it's somebody else, but the number one need for them is a second line center. Because I think they're trying so hard to make it work right now with him and Thomas, and I don't think it is. Yeah. I think what you need is somebody on that second line that can play center, get the most out of Jordan Kyrou, and you can make it work where Kyrou into that second line forward, or the second line center are a combination, and Thomas with Neighbors are your combination on the top line, and then you go from there. And at that point, I do think you can make it work with Thomas, Neighbors, Thomas, Kyrou, and Buch all getting paid. But you've got to have young guys that are filtering into the lineup around them that are cheap and cost-controlled, because that's how you offset the money. That's how you make it work, where you're paying 3 forwards big money, even if some of them might not be on your top line. All right, we'll hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind. We got a potential upset that's in the making right now. Western Kentucky up big against Marquette. We'll talk about it in the Rewind next year on 101 ESPN.
From the opening drive.
Yesterday you like Shaka Smart?
Bring him over here for this segment.
You're worried?
No, let's bring Patrick over this segment.
Big app. Seriously, I just watched that shot again from the FAU player. It was embarrassing. He had 2 guys in his face and just chucked it. You had no set play to run?
That was bad. I like it. T-Bone.
Hey, T-Bone, will you
I'm
going to
miss watching the tournament with you guys today.
Will you unplug me?
To be fair, we wouldn't have watched the tournament today.
Yeah, I would have gone home immediately after this show.
I would have been sick. Today, tomorrow, and the next day. Oh, you're down here.
Sorry. I didn't want to reach over you.
Would have looked awkward if it weren't where your head would have been.
Better reach down there, baby.
He's doing a sports center here?
He pushed it because of Parrish.
I didn't know that. I wouldn't have kept us going.
This dude just abuses this line.
Oh, I had no idea that we still had a sports center. Shit.
Well, we didn't either.
Yeah,
BK. I didn't know that we had a Sports Center update, and you know how Tanner can't control his people.
Bradford, bring it right to us.
We're good. It's going to be, we're getting out. We're getting out. It's fine. Yeah, we are.
Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loop, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
We've been broadcasting today live from Helen Fitzgerald's. We'll be heading out here in just a moment, but the Fast Lane will be here until 6 o'clock today. Come on out, say hello. It's all brought to you by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Quick update from the NCAA tournament. At the half, San Diego State is up 35-29. Western Kentucky with a big upset potential alert here. 43-36 up at the half against Marquette. A 15 potentially over a 2 there. T-Bone, do you think they get it done?
I hope they get it done and win by 15 plus because some of us have the spread.
Alex, who you got in that one? Western Kentucky or Marquette?
Kentucky.
I like it.
I always root for chaos.
I think they'll come back. I don't know if they'll cover, but I think they'll come back.
The big game I'm looking forward to later on today is New Mexico, 11 seed over a 6 seed. They are a 2.5-point favorite in that one, and I do think they will come away with a victory there. Alex, what's your big game that you're looking forward to?
I don't have one.
Okay, cool. T-Bone, anything that you're most excited about later on today?
I'm fascinated by this Grand Canyon St. Mary's game because St. Mary's ended up winning that conference over Gonzaga, and yet Grand Canyon is the one that is getting all the public bets. So I'm fascinated by that one.
I lied. Auburn and Yale. I want to see if Auburn's as real of a deal as people made it to be.
Enjoy the rest of the day today. Yeah. Round 1 of the NCAA tournament. We'll have plenty of reaction on Monday. A must-win for the Blues tomorrow as well, so stay tuned for that. Fast Lane's coming up next. You're on 101 ESPN.